The USS Enterprise D glided through the silk-black void of Sector 001, her nacelles casting subtle warp field distortions against the starfield. On the bridge, Captain Jean-Luc Picard reviewed stellar cartography reports with the methodical calm of a man who had negotiated with Romulans, reasoned with Klingons, and survived the Borg. The Federation's flagship hummed with the quiet efficiency of exploration until every console simultaneously screamed warnings. "Captain!" Lieutenant Worf's voice cut through the bridge like a disruptor blast. "Detecting massive energy surge, bearing 027 Mark 15. Configuration unknown. It's..." The Klingon security officer's fingers flew across tactical. "Sir, it's opening inside our shields." The view screen erupted in crystalline geometries that hurt to observe, angles that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space, tessellating into a wound in reality itself. Not a wormhole, not a subspace rupture, something fundamentally wrong with the fabric of space-time. Bleeding colors that had no names in any language the universal translator recognized. "Red alert," Picard commanded, rising from his chair. "Shields to maximum. Hail them on all frequencies." Data's golden eyes reflected the impossible light. "Captain, I am detecting no coherent energy signature. The phenomenon exhibits properties inconsistent with any known physics. Matter and energy readings fluctuate beyond quantum uncertainty principles. It is as if the laws of causality themselves are..." Three figures materialized on the bridge. Not transported, not beamed. They simply became, bypassing every security protocol, every transporter inhibitor, every law that governed how matter moved through space. One moment, empty air. The next, armored warriors standing in combat formation, weapons raised. The tallest wore massive plated armor that would have made a Klingon warrior weep with envy. Shoulders like bulkheads, a helmet with a single horizontal visor glowing with menacing light. A Titan. In his hands, a weapon that resembled no phaser or disruptor. A hand cannon that thrummed with barely contained solar fire. To his left crouched a lighter figure, sleek armor covered in a tattered cloak that moved in a wind that didn't exist. The Hunter. Dual hand cannons tracked every crew member with predatory precision, and an arc energy crackled between the figure's fingertips like bottled lightning. The third stood with scholarly posture, robes flowing over segmented armor, one hand extended with void energy swirling in a dark singularity. The Warlock. Knowledge and power made manifest, already analyzing the bridge with the intensity data usually reserved for positronic calculations. Hovering above each warrior, a small geometric construct, part AI, part something else entirely. Shells rotating around a central eye. Light pulsing in patterns that made the ship's computer system stutter. Ghosts. Silence. The kind that precedes either diplomacy or bloodshed. Picard raised one hand slowly, palm open. Centuries of first contact protocol crystallized into a single gesture. "I am Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation's Starship Enterprise. When you are clearly not here by choice, we mean you no harm." The Titan's weapon didn't lower. His ghost, shell fragments painted in white and gold, spun rapidly. When it spoke, the voice bypassed the universal translator entirely, appearing directly in their minds with a faint echo of machine precision. "Guardian 7, spatial temporal coordinates do not match any known system. Vex technology signature detected prior to transit. Recommend defensive posture until threat assessment complete. Where are our Fireteam?" The Titan's voice rumbled like distant thunder, filtered through the helmet. "Where's the strike zone? Where are the Vex?" Worf's hand hovered over the phaser controls. The Klingon had fought Borg, Cardassians, and Romulans. But these warriors radiated something different. Not malice, purpose. The kind carried by soldiers who died 1,000 times and kept fighting. Counselor Deanna Troi stepped forward, her empathic senses reeling. "Captain, I'm sensing..." It's difficult to describe. Determination, confusion, but underneath. She steadied herself against Riker's offered arm. They don't register quite as living beings should. There's something else sustaining them, something I can't read. The Hunter's cloak billowed as the warrior moved with liquid grace to the tactical console. scanning it with technology that made the Enterprise's systems look primitive. No light signature on this vessel, no Guardian infrastructure, no Vanguard channels. The voice was sharp, female, carrying the edge of someone who'd survived impossible odds through quick thinking. Ghost? And are we in the Dark Age? Her ghost, shell-painted midnight blue with silver accents, materialized holographically over the console. Data's positronic brain worked overtime, trying to comprehend the technology. The ghost attempted to interface with the Enterprise computer, and for 3 seconds, every screen on the bridge displayed cascading geometric patterns before Lieutenant Commander Data severed the connection. Fascinating, the android murmured. The construct attempted a full system integration using protocols that do not exist in our database. The processing architecture is quantum adjacent, but operates on principles that appear to violate entropy. The warlock finally lowered his hand, the void energy dissipating like smoke. His ghost, crimson shell with gold filigree, floated near his shoulder. When the warlock spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone who'd studied reality's deepest mysteries. "We're not in our universe anymore, are we?" Picard met the warlock's hidden gaze. Centuries of diplomatic experience told him this was the moment that determined everything. "No," he said simply, "you are not. And I suspect neither of us fully understands how you arrived. But perhaps we can find answers together, without weapons pointed at my crew." The Titan looked to his Fireteam. Some unspoken communication passed between them, years of combat forming bonds deeper than words. Slowly, carefully, they lowered their weapons. But Picard noticed they didn't holster them. "Mr. Data," Picard said quietly, "take us to Yellow Alert. Prepare guest quarters in Section 7, and get me everything we know about temporal anomalies, dimensional rifts, and impossible physics." He turned back to the warriors. "I believe we have much to discuss. Welcome aboard the Enterprise." The hunter's ghost emitted a sound like skeptical laughter. "Yeah, welcome to whatever fresh hell this is." On the view screen behind them, the crystalline wound in space collapsed with a sound like breaking glass. The Vex Gateway, if that's what it had been, sealed itself, leaving the Guardians stranded in a universe that had never heard of the light, the darkness, or the war that had raged since before Earth's golden age. In sickbay, Dr. Beverly Crusher was already preparing biobeds, unaware that she was about to scan beings who died and been resurrected so many times, death had become a minor inconvenience. In engineering, Geordi LaForge checked the warp core readings, not knowing that paracausal energy was about to make his visor's sensors scream with contradictory data. And in his ready room, Picard poured himself an Earl Grey tea, contemplating how to explain the Prime Directive to immortal warriors who'd spent centuries doing nothing but fighting humanity's enemies. The Guardians had entered a universe where violence was the last resort, diplomacy the first weapon, and resurrection was considered impossible. They were about to teach the Federation that some wars couldn't be won with words, and the Federation was about to teach them that some things were worth more than victory. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. When hope shines brightest in the darkest night, the Observation Lounge had hosted negotiations with Klingon High Council members, Romulan senators, and even a brief tense discussion with a Borg drone during the encounter with Hugh. But Captain Picard had never conducted first contact quite like this. The three Guardians stood rather than sat, positioned with tactical awareness that Worf grudgingly respected. They'd removed their helmets at Picard's request, a gesture of trust that revealed faces marked by experiences no Federation citizen could comprehend. The Titan was a broad-shouldered man with a scarred jaw and eyes that had witnessed civilizations fall. The Hunter was a woman with sharp features and calculating intelligence, her gaze constantly tracking exit points and threats. The Warlock appeared younger, and though something ancient lurked behind his thoughtful expression, as if mortality itself had become a theoretical concept. Their ghosts hovered protectively nearby, optical sensors tracking every movement of the senior staff. "Let me understand this correctly," Picard said, hands folded on the conference table. "You are warriors who have been resurrected from death by these ghosts and granted powers that violate our understanding of physics. You fight an ongoing war against multiple hostile species, And you've been doing this for how long? The warlock's ghost, whom he'd introduced as Ophiuchus, pulsed softly. Guardian 3 has been risen for approximately 217 years. Subjective time. Combat deployments number in the thousands. Commander Riker's expression remained carefully neutral. But Picard caught the minute tension in his first officer's jaw. 200 years of continuous warfare. The concept alone was anathema to Federation principles. And your civilization, Deanna Troi asked gently, it exists in a state of perpetual conflict? The last city, the hunter said, her voice carrying the weariness of someone who'd defended the same walls for lifetimes. Humanity's final stronghold. We protect it from the fallen, the hive, the vex, the cabal, the taken. She counted threats on her fingers like someone listing grocery items. And the darkness itself when it decides to show up personally. Data's head tilted with characteristic curiosity. You speak of the darkness as a sentient force. Do you mean this metaphorically? The Titan, who'd given only the designation Titan 7, as if names had become irrelevant, laughed without humor. I wish. The darkness is real, conscious, ancient. It's been trying to wipe out humanity since before we figured out nuclear fission. The Traveler gave us the light to fight back. He gestured to his ghost. These little guys are pieces of the Traveler. Without them, we're just corpses waiting to remember we're dead. Beverly Crusher leaned forward, medical curiosity overriding diplomatic protocol. You're telling me you've actually died and been brought back? That's not resuscitation or stasis? You mean true biological death? The hunter's ghost, Artemis painted in midnight blue, spun its shell segments. Guardian 12 has experienced terminal cessation 4,732 times. Current resurrection streak, 6 days, 14 hours. The silence that followed was profound. Mon Dieu, Picard whispered. Riker found his voice first. 4,000? How is that psychologically possible? The trauma alone, you get used to it, the hunter said flatly. Sort of. First 100 times are the worst. After that, death becomes tactical. You learn to throw yourself into impossible situations because you know you'll come back. Makes you bold, makes you reckless. Her eyes darkened. Makes you forget what mortality actually means. Worf's warrior instincts recognized the truth in her words. You fight without fear of death. This would make you formidable soldiers. Makes us weapons, the warlock corrected quietly. That's what Guardians are. Weapons the Traveler forged from humanity's corpses to fight a war we didn't start and can't stop fighting. The philosophical weight settled over the room. Picard had encountered many cultures with different relationships to violence. Klingons who celebrated combat, Vulcans who transcended it, even the Borg who'd mechanized it. But warriors who literally couldn't stay dead, who'd been fighting for centuries without respite. In the Federation, Picard said carefully, we believe in the possibility of peaceful coexistence. We formed alliances with former enemies. The Klingon Empire was once our greatest threat. Now they are our staunchest allies. Violence is our last resort, not our primary purpose. The Titan's ghost, Sundance with its white and gold shell, emitted something that might have been a scoff. That's nice, really. But what do you do when the enemy doesn't want peace? When they literally want to extinguish your light and feast on your civilization's bones? When they're older than your concept of morality and don't care about your diplomatic overtures? We seek understanding, Deanna said. We look for common ground. We tried that with the Fallen, the hunter replied. Some of them just want to survive, scavenge, rebuild. Others rape entire planets for ether. The Hive? They don't negotiate. They have a theology that requires our extinction. The Vex? They're trying to write themselves into reality's source code, so they've always existed and we never did. She met Deanna's empathic gaze without flinching. Tell me, counselor, how do you find common ground with an enemy that wants to delete you from ever having existed? Troi had no answer. Data broke the tension with characteristic precision. Your description suggests multiversal threat scenarios beyond our current defensive capabilities. However, you also mentioned the Vex specifically. These entities utilize temporal manipulation technology? The warlock nodded, grateful for the analytical direction. Time travel, dimensional rifting, reality engineering. We think they pulled us through when one of their gates malfunctioned. Or maybe it didn't malfunction. Maybe they sent us here deliberately. He rubbed his temples. With the Vex, causality is more like a suggestion. Fascinating, Data's eyes gleamed. We have experience with temporal anomalies. If we could analyze the entry point. Red alert klaxons screamed through the ship. Worf's console lit up like a Christmas tree. Captain, my Borg cube decloaking at extreme sensor range, bearing 173 Mark 45, distance 3 light years and closing at high warp. The temperature in the room plummeted. Picard's face went pale. Every officer who'd survived Wolf 359 knew that look, the controlled terror of facing assimilation again. Battle stations, helm, evasive maneuvers, maximum warp, heading. They've already detected us, Worf growled. Altering course to intercept. Time to weapons range, 9 minutes. The Titan stood, donning his helmet in one smooth motion. Solar light ignited around his fists like miniature suns. The Borg. We read about them in your computer files while you were preparing this meeting. Cybernetic hive mind that assimilates species. Adaptive shielding. Billions of drones. Yes, Picard said, his command mask firmly in place despite the memories clawing at his psyche. We need to run. The Enterprise cannot defeat a Borg cube. The Hunter checked her hand cannons, arc energy crackling between her fingers. Guardian 12 to Fireteam. Looks like we're doing this the hard way. The Warlock's hands began weaving void light into complex geometric patterns. Standard Borg engagement protocol? Shoot them until they stop adapting, the Titan confirmed. Then shoot them some more. Riker stood abruptly. You can't possibly think you can fight a Borg cube. We're talking about billions of drones, weaponry that can cut through our shields like paper, and adaptive technology that adapts to conventional physics, the Warlock interrupted. We're paracausal. We exist outside your natural laws. Sir, their adaptation might not work on light. Picard met the Titan's hidden gaze. The captain of the flagship Enterprise, diplomat and explorer, faced 3 immortal warriors who'd spent lifetimes doing nothing but fighting impossible odds. And somewhere in Picard's mind, Locatus whispered memories of the collective's cold hunger. Mr. Worf, Picard said quietly, prepare for combat and give our guests access to Transporter Room 3. Sir? Worf's surprise was evident. If the Borg want to assimilate paracausal warrior, Picard said, watching the Guardians prepare for battle with the casual efficiency of people who died thousands of times, let's give them something they cannot adapt to. The Hunter grinned, and it was not a kind expression. Finally, something to shoot. On the view screen, the Borg cube grew larger, a perfect geometric nightmare that had destroyed fleets and civilizations. The collective was about to encounter warriors who'd fought gods and won. The Enterprise shuddered as the Borg cube's tractor beam locked on, dragging the starship toward assimilation, like a spider reeling in prey. On the bridge, every console displayed the same cold certainty. Shields failing, weapons ineffective, inevitable defeat approaching at relativistic speeds. Shields down to 47%, Worf reported, his voice tight with controlled fury. Weapons have no effect. They are adapting to our phaser frequencies faster than we can modulate. Picard gripped his command chair. Wolf 359 memories threatening to overwhelm his tactical discipline. Thousands of ships destroyed. Thousands of voices screaming as the collective consumed them. His own voice, cold and mechanical. Resistance is futile. Not again. Not his ship. Not his crew. In Transporter Room 3, the Guardians stood on the pad, while Chief O'Brien frantically calibrated the beam for their exotic energy signatures. His instruments screamed contradictions, matter that wasn't quite matter, energy that violated conservation laws, life signs that flickered between existence and impossibility. I can get you over there, O'Brien said, sweat beading on his forehead. But I can't guarantee retrieval if your ghosts are damaged. These readings are completely outside normal transporter safety protocols. The Titan hefted his hand cannon, a weapon called Ace of Spades that had killed hive gods and fallen Kells. We've done insertions into hive dreadnoughts before. Worst case, and we die and get rezzed in your brig. That's the worst case? O'Brien's voice cracked slightly. The hunter checked her dual hand cannons. The last word in Hawkmoon, legendary weapons that had survived centuries of warfare. Chief, in our world, getting disintegrated by a Vex teleporter is a Tuesday. Getting turned into a cyborg? At least that's creative. Artemis, her ghost, hovered near O'Brien's console, analyzing the transporter technology with fascination. Interesting. Matter-energy conversion via quantum resolution, crude compared to transmat, but elegant in its simplicity. The pattern buffer is the weak point. Limited storage capacity, no paracausal redundancy. Sundance, the Titan's ghost, materialized above his Guardian's shoulder. Guardian 7 Borg technological profile suggests attempts at ghost assimilation are probable. Recommend aggressive dismantlement of any drone attempting interface. Way ahead of you, buddy. The warlock stood in meditative stillness, void light swirling around his hands in fractal patterns. His mind touched the dimensions beyond 3 space, the paracausal realms where the light originated. In this universe, he felt the absence of the traveler like a missing limb, but the light remained, burning in his soul where it had been forged through death and resurrection. Ophiuchus pulsed with concern. Guardian 3, without access to the traveler's blessing, resurrection protocols may experience complications in this universe's physical framework. Then we don't die, the warlock said simply. Standard protocol. O'Brien's hands hovered over the controls. Captain Picard is hailing. You're authorized for transport. So, in Guardian 7? The Irish engineer met the Titan's visor. Give them hell. We don't do hell, the Titan replied, solar light igniting around his fists until he burned like a captive star. We do extinction. The transporter engaged. The Borg cube's interior was a cathedral of nightmare efficiency. Corridors stretched into darkness, lined with alcoves where drones regenerated, their cybernetic implants pulsing with sickly green light. The air tasted of ozone and decay. Machinery and flesh merged into something that offended the concept of individuality. 3 Guardians materialized in a shower of light particles. Immediately, 20 Borg drones turned as one, their collective consciousness registering the intrusion with cold precision. Assimilation tubules extended from their arms like mechanical serpents. Species unknown, its biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our own. Resistance is futile. The hunter moved first. Arc light erupted from her body in a blinding storm of electricity. She blinked, not running, but teleporting in bursts of lightning, and her hand cannons roared. The last word fired golden bullets that punched through Borg personal shields as if they were tissue paper, each shot a thunderclap of paracausal force. Hawkmoon's exotic rounds detonated on impact, and the first 3 drones exploded in showers of sparks and biomechanical components. The drones adapted instantly, shields modulated. The next volley dissipated against regenerated barriers. Adaptation achieved. Resistance remains futile. Cute, the hunter snarled and threw her arc staff. The storm trance erupted, the lightning chaining from drone to drone in cascading arcs of pure electrical fury. But this wasn't electromagnetic energy the Borg could adapt to. This was paracausal arc light, electricity that existed because Guardians willed it to exist, power that laughed at thermodynamics and conservation of energy. Drones seized and convulsed, their adaptive shielding trying desperately to modulate against energy that came from outside the universe's physical laws. Cortical implants overloaded. Nanoprobes flash-fried in their bloodstreams. The collective screamed silently as 15 drones died to power that shouldn't exist. The Titan charged through the carnage like an armored meteor. His hammer of Sol manifested in his hands. Pure solar light forged into the shape of ancient weaponry, burning with the fury of stars being born. He swung. Oinian, the superheated construct, obliterated a drone on contact, the body vaporizing in nuclear fire. Another swing sent a flaming hammer flying across the corridor, and where it struck, drones burned with light that consumed them from the inside out. Adaptation impossible. The collective's voice stuttered for the first time in millennia. Energy signature exists outside known physics. Causality violation detected. Threat level, Extreme. Yeah, the Titan growled, slamming a sunspot into the deck that erupted in a pillar of solar flame. You should be scared. The warlock hung back, hands weaving geometric patterns in the air. Nova bomb coalesced between his palms. Concentrated void light compressed into an orb of annihilating darkness. Gravity itself warping around the construct. He released it, and then the miniature black hole sailed down the corridor, pulling drones from their alcoves and crushing them into atomic paste before detonating in an explosion of pure entropic force. The deck buckled, bulkheads groaned, and in the blast's aftermath, a perfect sphere of nothing existed where matter used to be. The atoms themselves temporarily convinced they'd never existed. Ophiuchus scanned rapidly. Guardian 3 detecting massive Borg response. Estimate 300 drones converging on our position. Recommendation: tactical withdrawal. Negative, the warlock replied, already charging another Nova bomb. We're here to send a message. The drones came in waves, and the Guardians danced. The hunter became lightning incarnate, teleporting through the Borg ranks, her hand cannons singing their ancient song of golden death. She dodged assimilation tubules with precognitive grace, centuries of fighting enemies faster than thought giving her reflexes that made Borg adaptation look sluggish. When a drone grabbed her arm, she grinned and let arc light detonate from every pore, electrocuting a dozen attackers before her ghost rezzed her from the self-inflicted immolation. The Titan stood like a bulwark of solar fury, his barrier deployed, a wall of pure light that the Borg couldn't penetrate, couldn't adapt to, couldn't understand. Behind it, he methodically destroyed drone after drone, each hammer through a sentence of annihilation. When the collective tried to overwhelm him with sheer numbers, he activated his fist of havoc and became a meteor of arc destruction, slamming into the deck with enough force to crater the hull and electrocute everything within 20 meters. The warlock fought with scholarly precision, each ability deployed with surgical efficiency. Void grenades created singularities that pulled drones together before crushing them. Healing rifts kept his fire team alive through impossible odds. And when the collective tried to analyze his light, he smiled and cast Chaos Reach, a sustained beam of arc energy that carved through bulkheads and drones alike, the raw power making the cube's systems scream in languages the universal translator couldn't parse. On the Enterprise bridge, they watched through sensor feeds as 3 warriors did what entire fleets couldn't. They made the Borg afraid. Impossible, Data whispered, his positronic brain struggling to comprehend energy signatures that violated every law he knew. Their power output exceeds our warp core by orders of magnitude, and it's coming from nowhere. No fuel source, no energy conversion, just manifestation. Picard leaned forward, watching the Titan immolate 50 drones with a single hammer throw. Not impossible, Data. Paracausal. They exist outside our rules. Deep in the Borg cube's core, the collective processed this new threat with cold logic. Adaptation had failed. These beings wielded power that came from dimensions the Borg couldn't access, energies that ignored physical law, and they returned from death as if mortality itself was negotiable. The collective reached a conclusion. These beings could not be assimilated. They must be destroyed. Every drone on the cube received new directives. Every weapon system powered up. The collective would sacrifice this entire vessel if necessary to eliminate the paracausal threat. And in Transporter Room 3, Chief O'Brien frantically tried to get a lock on the Guardians as the Borg cube began its death throes, wondering if the universe had just witnessed immortal warriors teaching machines the meaning of fear. The Borg cube's core chamber was a cathedral of assimilation, a vast spherical space where thousands of drones worked in perfect synchronization. Their collective consciousness focused on a single goal: integrate all biological and technological distinctiveness. Conduits pulsed with green energy, carrying nanoprobes to transform the unwilling into components of perfection. And the Guardians materialized in the center via their own transmat technology, their ghosts having mapped the cube's interior layout during the initial assault. They appeared in a triangle formation, back to back, weapons ready. Around them, the Borg responded with the cold efficiency of a hive mind, recognizing a cancer in its system. We are the Borg. You will be destroyed. Your paracausal existence is incompatible with perfection. The Titan's laugh echoed through his helmet. "First smart thing you've said." The cube's internal defenses activated, plasma conduits redirected, flooding the chamber with lethal radiation. Force fields sprang up, designed to contain and compress intruders into molecular paste. Cutting beams swept across the space with surgical precision. The warlock raised one hand, and a ward of dawn manifested. A perfect sphere of void light that shimmered with purple-black energy. The Borg weapons struck the barrier and simply stopped, their force absorbed by paracausal shielding that existed because a guardian willed it to exist. Inside the ward, the three warriors took a moment to breathe. "Okay," the hunter said, reloading Hawkmoon with practiced efficiency. "Standard raid protocol. We need to find this thing's equivalent of a heart and rip it out." Artemis projected a holographic map she'd been compiling. Central processing node located 17 decks down. The collective's primary consciousness resides in a neural matrix protected by adaptive shielding in approximately 10,000 drones. "So Tuesday," the Titan said. Sundance chimed in. "Guardian 7, detecting unusual energy signatures in the lower decks. The Borg are attempting to adapt to paracausal phenomena by modifying themselves. They're incorporating quantum uncertainty into their shielding algorithms." The warlock frowned. "They're trying to make themselves unpredictable? To counter our light?" "Affirmative. It will not work. Paracausal power by definition supersedes probability. But the attempt suggests the collective is learning fear." Ophiuchus pulsed with something like satisfaction. "Good. Fear makes enemies predictable." The Ward of Dawn collapsed as the warlock let it dissipate. Immediately, the Borg pressed the attack, drones flooding from alcoves, weapons fire converging from every angle, assimilation tubules extending like a forest of mechanical vipers. The hunter activated her golden gun. Solar light erupted from her hand in the shape of a flaming revolver, power so concentrated that reality bent around it. She fired 3 shots, each one a miniature supernova. The first bullet punched through 17 drones, their bodies exploding in chains of solar fire. The second ignited a plasma conduit, turning a section of the cube into an inferno. The third struck a structural support, and the entire chamber tilted as the deck plating melted. "You will be destroyed," the collective repeated, but now the voice carried something new. Uncertainty. The Titan didn't bother with subtlety. He activated Burning Maul, a massive hammer of solar light that could shatter mountains, and began his work. Each swing was an earthquake. Each impact, a detonation. Drones tried to swarm him, and he spun, the hammer's momentum carrying him through their ranks like a wrecking ball through paper. Metal screamed, circuits exploded, and everywhere the Titan walked, the Borg burned. A tactical drone targeted him with a plasma beam powerful enough to cut through starship hulls. The beam struck the Titan's chest plate and dissipated harmlessly, his solar light too bright, too hot, too fundamentally wrong for the weapon to affect. The Titan looked down at the scorch mark on his armor, then back at the drone. "My turn." He threw the Burning Maul. The hammer flew across the chamber, struck the tactical drone, and detonated in a solar explosion that vaporized everything within 50 meters. When the flames cleared, a perfect sphere of molten metal glowed where the Borg had been. The warlock fought with devastating precision, his movements economical and deadly. A scatter grenade arced through the air, splitting into void seekers that tracked individual drones and erased them from existence. His Akilos hand cannon, a weapon forged in the Warmind Rasputin's image, fired void rounds that punched through adaptive shielding and left perfectly circular holes in Borg craniums. But the collective was learning. New drones emerged, their implants modified with quantum processors, their shields flickering through probability states. They moved erratically, unpredictably, trying to counter the Guardian's supernatural reflexes. One managed to grab the warlock's arm. Assimilation tubules pierced his armor, and nanoprobes flooded into his bloodstream. For 3 seconds, the collective tried to assimilate a Guardian. The nanoprobes encountered light-infused cells that existed in superposition between life and death. Matter that had been resurrected so many times, it barely qualified as biological anymore. They found a consciousness that had touched the traveler's paracausal essence and been fundamentally altered by it. They discovered that trying to assimilate something that existed outside causality was like trying to calculate the square root of purple. The warlock's body ignited with void light from the inside. The drone's arm exploded, its neural implants overloaded, and for the first time in Borg history, the collective felt something almost like pain as feedback from the failed assimilation scorched through the neural network. Adaptation? Impossible. Target exists outside conceptual framework of reality. The warlock ripped free, his arm bleeding but already healing as his ghost channeled light into the wounds. You can't assimilate what you can't understand, and you'll never understand this. He unleashed Chaos Reach. Arc light exploded from his hands in a sustained beam of pure electrical fury, a river of lightning that carved through the Borg like a laser through fog. Drones vaporized, bulkheads melted, and the beam kept going, drilling deeper into the cube's infrastructure, following Ophiuchus's navigation toward the central processing core. On the Enterprise, alarm screamed. "Captain!" Worf's voice carried genuine shock. The cube is experiencing cascading system failures across 78% of its structure. Internal explosions detected on multiple decks. They're winning. Picard stood, disbelief and hope warring in his expression. Our 3 individuals are defeating a Borg cube? Data's fingers flew across his console. Correction, sir. They are not merely defeating it. Based on energy output readings, they are systematically dismantling the vessel's ability to function. The Borg appear unable to adapt to paracausal weaponry. Riker watched the sensor display with something like awe. How is this possible? We've thrown entire fleets at Borg cubes and barely survived. Because we fight with physics. Geordi's voice came over the comm from engineering, wonder evident in his tone. They fight with... I don't even know what to call it. My visor's showing me energy signatures that shouldn't exist, conservation laws being violated left and right, and weapons that are powered by literally nothing my instruments can detect. Counselor Troi closed her eyes, and her empathic senses reaching toward the cube. I can feel it, Captain. The collective is confused, afraid. They don't understand what they're facing, and for beings that have assimilated thousands of species, that confusion is terrifying them. Deep in the cube, the Guardians reached the central processing chamber. The neural matrix pulsed with sickly green light, a massive sphere of organic processors and cybernetic interfaces where the collective's consciousness resided. Thousands of drones formed a living wall around it, their adaptive shielding at maximum, their weapons charged and ready. The collective spoke through every drone simultaneously, its voice echoing in synthetic harmony. You cannot destroy us. We are billions. We are infinite. We are... Annoying, the hunter interrupted and activated her blade barrage. Cheryl's solar light exploded from her body, manifesting as dozens of flaming knives that tracked toward the neural matrix with homing precision. Each blade was a concentration of stellar fire, burning with heat that made fusion reactions look tepid. They struck the adaptive shielding and punched through, the Borg's defenses useless against weapons that ignored the concept of defense entirely. The knives embedded in the neural matrix and detonated. The sphere cracked, organic processors combusted, and the collective's consciousness fragmented as its central processing core began to die. Initiating self-destruct, the Borg announced with mechanical calm, even as their world collapsed. This vessel will be destroyed. You will be destroyed. Perfection will endure. The Titan checked his chronometer. Ghost, okay, how long until this thing blows? Sundance's scan was instantaneous. 47 seconds. Antimatter containment is already failing. Recommend immediate extraction. The 3 Guardians looked at each other. In that moment, centuries of fighting together, dying together, and being resurrected together crystallized into perfect understanding. Enterprise, the Warlock said into his comm unit, you might want to get clear. This is going to be loud. They didn't run. Instead, the Warlock raised both hands and void light swirled around the entire chamber. A well of radiance manifested beneath their feet, a pool of healing solar energy that would keep them alive through anything short of complete atomic annihilation. The Titan deployed his barrier again, this time layering it with the Warlock's Ward of Dawn. creating concentric spheres of light-based shielding. And the hunter? She reloaded her weapons and grinned. If we're going out like guardians. The Borg cube detonated. Antimatter met matter in a reaction that briefly outshone nearby stars. The explosion consumed the cube from within, a sphere of annihilation expanding at relativistic speeds. The Enterprise's shields screamed as the shockwave hit, but they were far enough away to survive. On the view screen, the Borg vessel transformed into a miniature sun, then collapsed into debris and radiation. In the center of the inferno, 3 Guardians stood inside impossible layers of paracausal shielding, the light keeping them alive through temperatures that would vaporize neutronium. Their ghosts channeled healing energy constantly, fighting entropy itself to maintain their bodies through the atomic hellstorm. And when the explosion finally faded, when the debris settled into the cold vacuum of space, 3 figures floated amid the wreckage, their armor scorched but intact, their light burning defiantly against the darkness. Chief O'Brien got a transporter lock and brought them home. They materialized in Transporter Room 3, smoking and battered, their armor cracked and their weapons depleted. The hunter collapsed to one knee, breathing hard. The Titan's shields flickered and died. The warlock leaned against the transporter console, his ghost already working to heal radiation damage that would have killed any normal being instantly. O'Brien stared at them, his Irish practicality completely overwhelmed. You survived a Borg cube's self-destruct. Why from the inside? The Titan removed his helmet, revealing a face that had seen too much death to be impressed by one more. Yeah, it's not even in our top 10 close calls. And in the silence that followed, the Federation began to understand. They had encountered warriors for whom impossible was just another mission parameter. Sickbay had never been quite so crowded with impossibility. Dr. Beverly Crusher circled the 3 Guardians with medical tricorder in hand, her instruments screaming contradictions that made her 15 years of Starfleet medical training feel inadequate. The readings flickered between life signs and null values, showing cellular structures that shouldn't exist and energy signatures her database couldn't classify. This is fascinating, she murmured, scanning the hunter's arm where Borg nanoprobes had briefly invaded. The assimilation tubules penetrated your dermal layer, introduced Borg technology into your bloodstream, and then nothing. The nanoprobes just died, burned out from the inside. The hunter sat on the biobed, her cloak draped over the back of a chair, revealing armor that looked like it had survived a war, because it had thousands of them. Light-infused cells, paracausal biology. We're not really alive in the way you'd understand it, Doc. We're corpses the Traveler decided should keep walking. Artemis hovered nearby, her optical sensor tracking Beverly's every movement with protective vigilance. Guardian 12's cellular structure exists in quantum superposition, simultaneously organic and paracausal. The nanoprobes attempted to interface with biology that doesn't follow your universe's rules. Beverly looked at the ghost, then back at her patient. You're telling me you're simultaneously alive and dead? Schrodinger's zombie, the hunter said with a dark grin. Welcome to Guardian biology. Across the room, the Titan sat shirtless, while Beverly's medical staff examined the scorch marks across his chest. Burns that should have been fatal, but were already healing at visible speed. Sundance projected holographic readouts that made the Federation doctor's eyes glaze over with incomprehension. Solar light infusion accelerating cellular regeneration, the ghost explained clinically. Guardian 7 absorbed approximately 17,000 rads of ionizing radiation during the cube's destruction. In your physiology, this would cause immediate death. For Guardians, it's an inconvenience. Nurse Agua carefully scanned the radiation damage, watching in real time as damaged cells repaired themselves. Dr. Crusher, you need to see this. The radiation is being metabolized, converted into some form of energy his body is using to accelerate healing. The warlock stood near the wall, Ophiuchus hovering at his shoulder, both of them observing the medical examination with scholarly interest. His robes covered most of his body, but the exposed skin showed scars that had healed and reformed so many times they'd created complex patterns. A roadmap of deaths endured and overcome. In our universe, he said quietly, Guardians have survived atmospheric re-entry, direct nuclear strikes, exposure to hard vacuum, immersion in molten metal, and temporal disintegration. Death is temporary, pain is negotiable. Beverly stopped her scans and looked at him directly. And the psychological toll? You said the hunter has died nearly 5,000 times. How does a mind survive that? Ophiuchus answered before his guardian could. It doesn't, not intact. Guardians experience memory degradation over time. Deaths blur together, old lives before resurrection fade. Many cannot remember their original names or families. The light preserves them, but it also changes them. They become something else. The door chimed, and Captain Picard entered with Commander Data. The captain's expression was carefully neutral, but his eyes showed the weight of what he'd witnessed. 3 individuals destroying what entire fleets couldn't touch. Doctor, Picard said, how are our guests? Alive, Beverly replied, the word carrying ironic weight. Though defining alive is becoming complicated. Captain, their biology violates every principle I know. They shouldn't exist, and yet they're healthier than most of my crew. Data approached the warlock, his positronic brain practically humming with curiosity. Guardian 3, may I ask you a philosophical question? The warlock nodded. You have died and been resurrected hundreds of times. Each death involves the complete cessation of neural activity, the breakdown of cellular structures, and in many cases, total molecular disintegration. Data's golden eyes reflected genuine wonder. When your ghost resurrects you, are you the same individual or a copy? Is consciousness continuous? Or does each death represent a true ending with a new being taking your place? The sickbay went quiet. The warlock was silent for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries of philosophical contemplation. I don't know. None of us do. Some Guardians believe we're the same person, just rebuilt. Others think we're copies who inherit the original's memories. A few think we're something in between, beings of light wearing flesh like a costume. He met Data's eyes. What do you think, android? Are you the same individual moment to moment, or does your consciousness end and restart between processing cycles? Data tilted his head. I had not considered the comparison. Perhaps we are both explorations of the same question. What defines continuous existence? The hunter swung her legs off the biobed. He'd done with the examination. Heavy questions for people who just blew up a Borg cube. How about we focus on the practical? We're stuck in your universe. The Vex gate that brought us here is gone. And somewhere back home, our Fireteam leader is probably wondering why we missed our check-in. About that, Picard said, pulling out a PAD. We've been analyzing the spatial anomaly that brought you here. Mr. Data? The android accessed the sickbay's display screen, showing complex waveforms and dimensional mathematics. The rift exhibited properties consistent with both temporal displacement and dimensional translation. Based on the residual signatures, I believe the phenomenon connected 2 parallel universes at a single point in spacetime. Can you recreate it? The Titan asked, hope evident in his voice. Guess not with current technology, Data admitted. The energy requirements alone would exceed our warp core's total output by a factor of 10,000. However, I have detected faint traces of similar energy signatures elsewhere in this sector. It is possible that other rifts exist, or that the phenomenon recurs naturally. Sundance projected tactical data. Guardian 7 recommendation: establish operational protocols with Federation while investigating rift signatures. Standard first contact procedure: exchange knowledge, build trust, prepare for departure. Except we just demonstrated we can destroy Borg cubes, the hunter pointed out. Pretty sure Starfleet is going to want us to stick around and kill more of them. Picard's expression remained diplomatic, but something flickered in his eyes. The look of a man who'd been Locatus, Sudi, who'd felt the collective's cold hunger, who'd carry those scars forever. I won't lie to you. The Borg are the Federation's greatest threat. They've assimilated entire civilizations. They nearly destroyed us at Wolf 359. His voice hardened. Watching you dismantle a cube from the inside gave me the first real hope I've felt since my own assimilation. But, the warlock prompted, but the Federation is not a military organization. We explore, We seek understanding. We build alliances. We do not create weapons, and we do not ask others to fight our battles. Picard met each Guardian's gaze. You are warriors from a universe at perpetual war. We are explorers trying to build peace. I fear what might happen if we become dependent on your power to solve problems diplomacy should address. The Titan stood, towering over the captain even without his full armor. With respect, sir, diplomacy doesn't work against the Borg. We just proved that. They adapt to your weapons, they assimilate your people, and they don't negotiate. In our universe, we call enemies like that extinction-level threats. You don't talk to extinction, you fight it. And if fighting becomes all you know, Picard challenged, if violence becomes your first response instead of your last, the Klingon Empire believed that for generations. It took centuries and countless deaths before we found another way. Counselor Troy stepped forward, her empathic senses focused on the Guardians. I can feel your dedication to protecting humanity. It's absolute, but I also sense, she paused, choosing words carefully, weariness, not physical exhaustion, something deeper. You've been soldiers for so long, you've forgotten what you're fighting for beyond simple survival. The hunter's hand unconsciously touched her cloak, a tattered remnant of a civilization that had fallen before she'd been resurrected to defend its remnants. We fight because the alternative is extinction. The last city is all that's left of humanity in our world. The darkness took everything else. So yeah, we're tired, but we don't get to stop. Artemis dimmed her optic. Guardian 12, biometric analysis suggests elevated stress markers. Recommend rest period. Ghosts don't get stress, the hunter muttered, but she didn't argue. An alarm chimed at Data's console. The android's expression shifted to something approaching surprise. Captain, I am detecting a transmission on an unusual frequency. It appears to be directed specifically at our guests. On screen, Picard ordered. The view screen activated and everyone in sickbay froze. The being that appeared was humanoid, but only in the loosest sense. Its form flickered between existence and non-existence. Wearing the clothing of a human from Earth's Renaissance period, with eyes that held the weight of eternity. When it smiled, the expression contained humor that had witnessed the birth and death of galaxies. Q, Picard breathed, and the name carried centuries of exasperation. The omnipotent entity clapped his hands in delight. Jean-Luc, and you've made new friends. How delightful. Though I must say, bringing paracausal warriors into my universe without an invitation is rather rude. Q's gaze fixed on the Guardians, and for the first time his smile held genuine curiosity. Now this is interesting. You don't belong here. You exist outside my continuum's framework. You're like... He paused, searching for words. Graffiti on reality's canvas. The warlock's hands immediately filled with void light, recognizing a cosmic tier threat when he saw one. Who or what are you? Q laughed, the sound echoing with dimensions the Enterprise's sensors couldn't measure. Oh, I like you already. I'm Q, omnipotent being, reality's playwright, an occasional thorn in Captain Picard's side. And you, dear Guardians, are the most entertaining thing to happen in this quadrant in millennia. He snapped his fingers. The Guardians vanished from sickbay and reappeared standing on what appeared to be the bridge of an ancient sailing ship, floating in the middle of space, with Q lounging in a captain's chair, wearing an admiral's uniform from Napoleonic-era Earth. Welcome, Q said with theatrical grandeur. To your trial, you claim to be warriors fighting for humanity's survival. Let's see if you're heroes, or just very efficient killers. Around them, space twisted, and the Enterprise watched helplessly as an omnipotent being decided to test warriors who'd fought gods. The difference was, these gods could fight back. The sailing ship hung in the void like a fever dream, its wooden planks defying vacuum, its sails billowing in solar winds that shouldn't exist. The three Guardians stood on the deck, weapons drawn, their ghosts scanning frantically for threats while Q reclined in an ornate chair, examining his fingernails with theatrical disinterest. This is impossible, Ophiuchus stated, his shell segments rotating rapidly. We're in hard vacuum without environmental seals. Guardian 3's oxygen saturation should be dropping, but readings show normal atmospheric pressure. The physics here are negotiable. Q waved dismissively. Physics is so limiting, don't you think? I prefer narrative causality. Much more entertaining. He stood and suddenly he was wearing Guardian armor, a perfect replica of the Titan's gear, complete with glowing visor. Tell me, do you always shoot first and ask questions never? Or is that just your cultural programming? The Titan kept his hand cannon trained on the entity. When something teleports us without permission, yeah, we tend to be cautious. Who are you really and what do you want? Q snapped his fingers. S and his outfit changed to elaborate judicial robes from Earth's Age of Enlightenment. I am Q, member of the Q Continuum, omnipotent, omniscient, and currently very bored. Your universe's little light versus darkness conflict? Adorable, quaint, but ultimately predictable. He circled the Guardians like a professor examining interesting specimens. What I want is to understand you. You fight an endless war. You die repeatedly. You've forgotten what peace even looks like. And yet you call yourselves heroes. The hunter lowered her weapon slightly, reading the situation with a tactician's eye. You're testing us. This is some kind of trial. Oh, she's clever! Q clapped delightedly. Yes, a trial. You see, your presence here is problematic. Paracausal beings disrupting a causal universe? That could get messy. So I'm going to give you 3 scenarios, and we'll see what kind of warriors you really are. The warlock's eyes narrowed. And if we refuse? Q's smile turned cold, and for a moment, the omnipotent being's true power became visible. Reality itself bending around him, timelines splitting and merging in his wake. Then I send you home immediately, to the exact moment you left, where you'll discover that in your absence, the last city fell. The Traveler was destroyed. Humanity went extinct. Your timeline pruned because its defenders weren't there. The threat hung in the void like a noose. You're bluffing, the Titan growled. Am I? Q snapped his fingers. The sailing ship vanished. The Guardians stood in the ruins of the last city. The tower was a shattered wreck, its walls breached and burning. The Traveler hung in the sky, it cracked and dark, its light extinguished, and everywhere bodies. Ghosts lay broken on the ground, their shells crushed, their guardians permanently dead. The hunter fell to her knees. No, this isn't. Relax, Q interrupted, and the illusion shattered. They were back on the ship. Just a preview of what could be. Time is flexible after all. Now shall we begin? The warlock stepped forward, void light swirling around his clenched fists. Fine, your trial, but know this. We've faced cosmic entities before. The darkness, the witness, the worm gods. You're powerful, but we're not impressed by gods who play with mortal lives. Q's expression shifted to something approaching respect. Excellent. Scenario 1. Reality rippled. The Guardians stood on a planet's surface. Lush, green, a clearly pre-warp civilization based on the primitive settlements visible in the distance. Above them, a Borg cube descended through the atmosphere, its tractor beams already beginning the assimilation process. Q appeared beside them, wearing Starfleet dress uniform. Here's your dilemma. This planet contains approximately 3 billion sentient beings. They have no warp capability, no advanced weapons, no way to defend themselves. The Borg will assimilate every single one of them unless someone intervenes. The hunter immediately checked her weapons. So we stopped the Borg. Easy. But there's the twist, Q said, holding up one finger. This planet is protected by the Prime Directive. Federation law strictly forbids interference with pre-warp civilizations. If you intervene, you'll violate the cornerstone principle of the Federation you're currently guests of. You'll prove that you're just violent outsiders who don't respect this universe's laws. The Titans stared at the descending cube. You're saying we should let 3 billion people be assimilated to preserve a legal principle? I'm saying, when Q replied, that the Federation has survived for centuries because they believe some principles are worth dying for. Cultural contamination of pre-warp species has led to disaster more times than I can count. And I can count to infinity. He gestured toward the settlements. These people have their own evolutionary path, their own destiny. Who are you to interfere? Sundance projected tactical data. Guardian 7 Borg Cube will reach optimal assimilation position in 4 minutes. Estimated civilian casualties. Total. The warlock looked at Q. What happens if we don't intervene? They all die. Well, not die exactly. Transformed into Borg drones, their individuality stripped away, their culture erased, their children turned into cybernetic slaves. Q's voice carried no emotion. But their natural development remains uncontaminated by outside influence. The Prime Directive is preserved. The three Guardians stood in silence, watching the cube descend. Artemis spoke quietly. Guardian 12, the Prime Directive exists to prevent cultural imperialism, to allow civilizations to develop naturally. The Federation has centuries of evidence showing that interference, even well-intentioned, often causes more harm than good. They also have centuries of hiding behind rules while people die, the hunter shot back. When the Vanguard has similar protocols, Ophiuchus pointed out, we don't reveal ourselves to non-Guardian humans. We let them live normal lives in the last city, protected but ignorant of the cosmic war fought on their behalf. That's different, the Titan argued. We're protecting them. This is abandoning them. Is it? Q asked, genuinely curious now. Or is it respecting their right to face their own challenges, make their own choices, even if those choices lead to destruction? The warlock closed his eyes, and for a moment, he was back in the last city, standing on the walls, watching civilians go about their daily lives, unaware of the fallen raiding parties he'd just killed, the hive knight he'd destroyed before it could breach the perimeter, the Cabal drop pod he'd shot down before it could land in the residential district. How many times had he made that choice? To fight in the shadows so others could live in the light? But this was different. This was watching genocide happen and doing nothing. The Prime Directive is a good principle, the warlock said slowly. It prevents the Federation from becoming imperialists, from forcing their culture on others, from playing God with civilizations that deserve to develop on their own terms. But, Q prompted, but there's a difference between cultural contamination and allowing mass murder. The warlock opened his eyes and they burned with void light. The Borg aren't a natural disaster. They're not an evolutionary challenge. They're an invasion force that strips away choice itself. Letting them assimilate this planet isn't respecting the Prime Directive. It's cowardice dressed up as principle. Q smiled. And there it is. The warrior's logic. Rules are negotiable when lives are at stake. No, the hunter said, standing. The warrior's wisdom. Some things are worth breaking rules for. The Prime Directive protects the right of civilizations to make their own choices. The Borg eliminate choice entirely. If we let this happen, we're not respecting their development. We're allowing their extinction. The Titan activated his hand cannon. In our universe, we swore an oath to protect those who cannot protect themselves. I don't care what universe I'm in, that oath still stands. Even if it makes you outcasts? Q asked. Even if the Federation sees you as dangerous vigilantes who can't be trusted to follow their laws? Yes, all three Guardians said simultaneously. Q laughed, genuine delight in his voice. Oh, Picard is going to hate this. Very well. Show me what your oath means. The restraints released. The Guardians moved as one. The hunter blinked into the air, arc light crackling around her as she transformed into a living lightning storm. She flew toward the Borg cube, hand cannons blazing, each shot a thunderclap that echoed across the planet. Her arc staff manifested, and she became a spear of electricity that punched through the cube's hull. The Titan launched himself upward with solar light, hammer of Sol blazing in his hands. He threw flaming constructs that struck the cube's shield generators, each impact a miniature sun going supernova. When he landed on the hull, he smashed through with his fist of havoc, arc energy cratering the alien metal. The warlock floated up with controlled grace, void light swirling around him like a dark nebula. So he cast Nova Bomb after Nova Bomb, each gravitational singularity tearing chunks from the Borg vessel. His chaos reach carved through crucial systems, following his ghosts targeting data with surgical precision. Below, the pre-warp civilization watched in awe and terror as their sky became a battlefield between armored warriors and a geometric nightmare. They would remember this day in their mythology, the day the Sky Warriors appeared and fought the Metal Gods. The Prime Directive had been violated. 3 billion lives had been saved. Q watched with satisfaction as the Borg cube, crippled and burning, retreated into warp space. Interesting choice. You prioritized immediate humanitarian concerns over long-term cultural purity. Very human of you. The Guardians rematerialized on the sailing ship, breathing hard, with their armor scorched but triumphant. Scenario 1 complete, Q announced. You chose action over principle. Now let's see if you can make the opposite choice. He snapped his fingers. Reality shifted again. The Guardians stood in the transporter room of a Starfleet vessel. Through the view screen, they saw a planet, beautiful, Earth-like, with thriving cities and advanced technology. And descending toward it, an asteroid the size of a small moon, its trajectory locked on an inevitable collision course. Q appeared wearing a science officer's uniform. Scenario 2, this is a warp-capable civilization, but they're xenophobic isolationists. They've refused all Federation contact, threatened to attack any ships that approach, and have made it clear they want nothing to do with the galaxy's other species. Artemis scanned the asteroid. Impact in 7 minutes, extinction-level event. The entire biosphere will be sterilized. The Federation detected the asteroid months ago, Q continued. They sent warnings. The civilization's government ignored them, called them lies from outsiders trying to invade. Now you have a choice. Beam down there, use your paracausal powers to destroy the asteroid, and save 1 billion people who will hate you for it. Or respect their clearly stated wishes to be left alone, even if it means their extinction. The hunters stared at the doomed planet. They don't believe the asteroid is real? Oh, some of them do, Q said. Scientists mostly, but their government has suppressed the data, called it propaganda. The population trusts their leaders more than alien warnings. He smiled without humor. Yaras sound familiar? The warlock understood immediately. You're asking if we force salvation on people who've chosen ignorance. I'm asking, Q replied, if you respect free will when it leads to suicide. Sundance provided calculations. Guardian 7 destroying the asteroid is within our capability. Concentrated solar light could fragment it into pieces small enough to burn up an atmosphere. But they don't want our help, the Titan said slowly. They've made that clear. They're going to die because their government lied to them, the hunter argued. That's not free will. That's manipulation. Is it our place to decide that? Ophiuchus asked. They're a sovereign civilization. They have the right to make their own choices, even catastrophic ones. Q leaned against the transporter console. In your universe, the Traveler chose humanity. Huck gave you the light without asking, made you guardians without consent. You've died thousands of times, been resurrected against what might have been your wishes, and been forced into an eternal war you never volunteered for. His eyes glittered. How is that different from beaming down to that planet and forcing them to accept your salvation? The question hit like a nova bomb. The warlock had wondered about that himself, late in the endless nights, when the light felt more like a curse than a gift. How many times had he died? How many times had his ghost dragged him back from death's peace? Had he ever truly consented to this immortal war? It's different, the Titan said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Q pressed. Or are you just more comfortable forcing your help on others because you've been forced to accept it yourself? The asteroid drew closer. 4 minutes until impact. The hunter paced, her tactical mind at war with her guardian's oath. If we do nothing, 1 billion people die. Children, innocents who trusted their government. If we intervene, the warlock countered, we prove that our power matters more than their choice. We become exactly what the Federation fears, being so powerful that we make decisions for others because we can. 3 minutes. The 3 guardians looked at each other, the weight of the choice crushing, and in that moment, they understood what Q was really testing. Not their power, but their wisdom. Not their ability to save, but their willingness to let go. We do nothing, the warlock said quietly. The Titan's head snapped toward him. What? We respect their choice. Their government made this decision for them, yes, but they're a warp-capable civilization. They have the technology to detect asteroids. They chose to trust their leaders over the evidence. That's their right as a sovereign people. The hunter's hands shook. You're asking us to watch 1 billion people die when we could save them. I'm saying, the warlock replied, his voice heavy with centuries of death, that maybe not every problem requires a guardian solution. maybe some choices have to be made by the people living with the consequences, even if we don't agree with them. 2 minutes. The Titan removed his helmet, revealing the anguish in his eyes. In our universe, we don't get to make this choice. Every threat requires a response. Every enemy must be destroyed. But maybe that's why we're always fighting, because we never learn to let others face their own battles. 1 minute. The Guardians stood in the transporter room and watched the asteroid descend. They had the power to save 1 billion lives. They chose not to use it. The asteroid struck. The planet's atmosphere ignited. The cities vaporized. And in the silence that followed, 3 immortal warriors learned what helplessness felt like. Q's expression was unreadable. Interesting. You chose principle over action, the opposite of scenario 1. You're learning that power isn't the same as righteousness. The warlock's voice was hollow. Did we just condemn 1 billion people to death to prove a philosophical point? No, Q said, and snapped his fingers. The asteroid reversed course. When the planet restored itself, 1 billion lives returned as if they'd never been threatened. This was always a test, Q explained. That civilization doesn't exist. I created it specifically for you. But your choice was real, and you chose to respect autonomy over forcing salvation. That, he paused, something like approval in his ancient eyes. That shows wisdom. The relief that flooded through the Guardians was almost painful. 1 more scenario, Q announced. The hardest one. Are you ready? The Guardians nodded, still shaken from watching a world die. Q smiled, and it was not a kind expression. Let's see if you can make the impossible choice. Reality collapsed and reformed into something that made even the Guardians' paracausal senses recoil. They stood in a vast chamber that existed in too many dimensions simultaneously. Walls that curved through impossible geometries, floors that were simultaneously ceilings, perspectives that hurt to observe. At the chamber's center floated 3 transparent containment fields, each holding a different figure. In the first field, Captain Picard, unconscious but clearly alive, his Starfleet uniform pristine. In the second field, a young girl, perhaps 8 years old, wearing civilian clothing from a Federation colony world. She clutched a stuffed animal and trembled with fear. In the third field, a Borg drone, but not a normal one. This drone's cybernetic implants were partially removed, human features visible beneath the machinery. Its eyes showed intelligence, awareness, and desperate hope. A recovering former drone, at her still mostly machine but fighting to reclaim humanity. Q materialized between the containment fields, his expression theatrically solemn. Welcome to Scenario 3, the trolley problem, paracausal edition, he gestured grandly. Behind each of these individuals is a different future timeline. I'm going to show you what happens if each one lives. Then you're going to choose which one dies. Absolutely not, the hunter snarled, weapons already drawn. We don't play God with people's lives. Q laughed and the sound echoed through dimensions that didn't exist. You already do. Every time you choose which civilian to save first, which guardian to revive, which mission to prioritize, you're deciding who lives and dies. I'm just making the choice explicit. His eyes glowed with omnipotent power. And if you refuse to choose, all 3 die. No exceptions, no loopholes, no paracausal resurrection. I've specifically prevented your ghost from working in this space. Ophiuchus's shell segments spun frantically. Confirmed. Unable to access light pathways. Resurrection protocols offline. This is beyond my parameters. Choose, Q commanded, or I choose for you. The Titan stepped forward, fists clenched. Show us the futures. If we're making this choice, we need all the information. Q snapped his fingers. Timeline Alpha. Picard lives. The chamber filled with holographic projections. They watched Captain Picard on the Enterprise bridge, older now, negotiating a peace treaty between the Federation and the Romulan Star Empire. The agreement ended centuries of Cold War, brought stability to the quadrant, and saved millions of lives over the following decades. Then the timeline shifted. They saw Picard discovering an ancient artifact, a weapon left behind by an extinct civilization, powerful enough to destroy the Borg collective entirely. He struggled with the decision, debated with his crew, consulted with Starfleet Command. Finally, he activated it. The Borg were annihilated. Every cube, every sphere, every drone across the galaxy, gone in an instant. The Federation celebrated. Worlds were liberated. Species saved from assimilation rejoiced. But then came the consequences. The Borg had been assimilating knowledge from thousands of species for millennia. In their collective consciousness resided cures for diseases, solutions to entropy, technologies that could revolutionize civilization. All of it erased, gone forever, and without the Borg as a common threat, the fragile alliances holding the quadrant together began to fracture. The Klingons grew aggressive again. The Romulans returned to their scheming. Within 50 years, the Alpha Quadrant descended into a war that made the Dominion conflict look like a border skirmish. Billions died. But it started with Picard's discovery. If he lived, he would save millions in the short term and doom billions in the long term. Timeline Beta, the child lives. The hologram shifted to show the young girl, Kestra her name was, growing up on a Federation colony. She became a scientist, specializing in temporal mechanics, brilliant, dedicated, obsessed with understanding time itself. At 43, she succeeded. Kestra developed a device that could rewrite history, changing events in the past to create better outcomes in the present. She called it the Temporal Restoration Engine. The Federation approved its use cautiously, fixing disasters, preventing tragedies, correcting mistakes. The first few uses were miraculous. A plague that killed millions, erased from history, a war that devastated 3 civilizations? Never happened. The timeline improved with each iteration. But causality is delicate. Each change created ripples. People who had died in the original timeline were now alive, making different choices, creating new problems. The corrected timeline began developing paradoxes, temporal loops, causality breaks. Kestra tried to fix it, using the engine to repair the damage her repairs had caused. But it was like patching a dam with wet paper. Each fix created new problems. The timeline destabilized. Reality began to unravel at the quantum level. And the Federation called in their best temporal physicists, but the damage was irreversible. Within 20 years, the entire quadrant would experience temporal collapse, time itself breaking down, past and future bleeding together into incomprehensible chaos. Billions of beings would exist in states of temporal flux, simultaneously alive and dead, young and old, experiencing every moment of their existence at once, a fate worse than death. And it all started because a brilliant child grew up to believe she could perfect history. Timeline Gamma, the drone lives. The hologram showed the recovered Borg drone, designation 3 of 7, slowly reclaiming individuality. The process was agonizing, each step a battle against residual programming. But with help from Dr. Crusher and Federation psychologists, 3 of 7 succeeded. And he became an advocate for other liberated drones, founding a rehabilitation program that saved thousands of former Borg. He gave speeches across the Federation, proving that even those touched by the collective's horror could return to individuality. His message was hope incarnate. No one was beyond saving. But then the Borg adapted. They'd been studying 3 of 7's recovery, analyzing how he'd broken free. The collective developed a new assimilation protocol specifically designed to prevent future liberation. The new nanoprobes were irreversible. Once assimilated, always assimilated. No exceptions. And because the Borg feared losing more drones to 3 of 7's influence, they accelerated their assimilation campaigns. They became more aggressive, more brutal, more efficient. Within 10 years, the collective assimilated 50 additional species, twice their normal rate. The Federation estimated 3 of 7's existence, while personally inspirational, indirectly caused the assimilation of over 300 billion sentient beings. One man's redemption led to the damnation of countless others. The holograms faded. Q stood among the 3 containment fields, his expression serious for once. So, Guardians, you've seen the futures. Captain Picard saves millions, but his actions lead to billions dead in galactic war. The child grows up brilliant, but breaks time itself. The drone reclaims his humanity, but inspires the Borg to become unstoppable. He gestured to each in turn. The seasoned leader whose wisdom becomes catastrophic. The innocent child whose genius destroys reality. The hopeful survivor whose redemption damns billions. Q's voice dropped to a whisper. Which one dies? Choose now, or I kill all three. The Guardians stood in horrified silence. Artemis broke it first, her voice shaking. This is impossible. Every choice leads to massive death tolls. There is no right answer. That's the point, Q said. Sometimes there are no right answers. Sometimes every option is terrible, and you have to choose anyway. That's what it means to have power. Not the ability to save everyone, but the burden of deciding who to save when you can't save all. The warlock's mind raced through philosophical frameworks, ethical systems, logical paradoxes. Utilitarian calculus suggested saving the person whose timeline caused the least harm. Deontological ethics argued you couldn't make that choice at all. Virtue ethics questioned what kind of person this choice would make them. But this wasn't an academic exercise. 3 real people floated in containment fields, their lives dependent on an impossible decision. The hunter paced, her tactical mind attempting to find a solution that didn't exist. What if we're missing something? What if there's a fourth option? There isn't, Q said flatly. I'm omnipotent. I know every possibility. These are the only futures. Choose. The Titan looked at each prisoner in turn. Picard, who'd shown them respect and hospitality. The child whose only crime was existing. The drone, fighting so hard to reclaim stolen humanity. How long do we have? He asked quietly. Until you decide, Q replied. But they're experiencing temporal compression. Every second for us is an hour for them. They're aware, conscious, terrified. The longer you deliberate, the longer they suffer. Sundance's voice was barely audible. Guardian 7, I have no tactical recommendation. This exceeds my programming parameters. The 3 Guardians moved to the center of the chamber, forming a triangle, their backs to the containment fields. They spoke in hushed tones, their voices carrying the weight of impossible choice. In our world, the warlock said, we'd fight. Find the enemy causing this situation and destroy them. Q is the enemy, the hunter replied, and he's omnipotent. We can't fight our way out. Then we think our way out, the Titan suggested. There has to be logic to this. The logic, Ophiuchus said quietly, is that power without wisdom is tyranny. Q is testing whether we understand that being able to act doesn't mean we should. The warlock closed his eyes. In our universe, the Traveler chose us, made us guardians without asking. We've spent centuries fighting without questioning if the fight was right, just that it was necessary. He opened his eyes and they were haunted. What if this is Q's real lesson? That having the power to choose doesn't mean we have the wisdom to choose correctly? So what do we do? The hunter asked. Let Q kill all 3 because we're not wise enough to decide? No, the Titan said slowly. We acknowledge that we're not wise enough and we choose anyway, because that's what Guardians do. We make impossible choices and live with the consequences. They turned back to face the containment fields. Q waited, omnipotent and patient. The warlock spoke first. If we choose based on utilitarian calculus, greatest good for greatest number, we save whoever causes the least death toll. But that reduces people to numbers. It says some lives matter more than others based on future potential. The hunter continued. If we choose based on innocence, we save the child. She hasn't done anything wrong, but her future actions would literally destroy time itself. The Titan finished. If we choose based on redemption, we save the drone. He represents hope that anyone can change, but his survival makes the Borg unstoppable. They stood in silence. Then the warlock did something unexpected. He walked to the containment field holding the child and placed his hand against the energy barrier. I choose her, he said quietly. The hunter's head snapped toward him. What? Her timeline destroys reality. Yes, the warlock agreed, but she's a child. She hasn't made those choices yet. We've seen a possible future, not an inevitable one. If she lives, we can guide her, teach her caution, help her understand the dangers of temporal manipulation. He looked at Q. You showed us what happens if she grows up without intervention. But what if she doesn't grow up alone? What if she has teachers who understand paracausal power and its consequences? Q's eyebrow raised. Interesting reasoning. but flawed. I showed you the timeline where she becomes a temporal physicist despite all warnings and guidance. Her genius and curiosity are intrinsic. You can't change that. Then we fail, the warlock said simply. But we fail trying to save an innocent child rather than making a cold calculation that some lives are worth more than others. The Titan stepped forward, standing beside the warlock. I agree. We saved the child. Not because her timeline is better. It isn't. But because she's a child. If we're going to make an impossible choice, we make it based on who we want to be, not cold mathematics. The hunter was silent for a long moment, staring at the 3 containment fields. Finally, she joined her fire team. Picard would understand. He's a Starfleet captain. He knew the risks. The drone deserves better, but he'd understand too. He knows what it means to be Borg, to be part of something greater than yourself. She looked at the child. She's innocent. If we have to choose, we choose to protect innocence, even if it's the wrong choice. Q studied them, and for the first time, his theatrical mask slipped. Genuine curiosity showed through. You're choosing the option with the worst long-term consequences, the one that leads to temporal collapse and reality breaking down. You're doing this knowingly. Yes, all 3 Guardians said. Why? The warlock met Q's ancient gaze. Because we're not omnipotent. We're not omniscient. We can't make perfect choices, but we can make human choices. And humans don't sacrifice children on the altar of statistical outcomes. We save them first and deal with the consequences later. Q was silent, then he smiled, not theatrically, but genuinely. Well done. He snapped his fingers. The containment fields vanished. All 3 figures, Picard, the child, and the drone, flickered and disappeared like holograms. They were never real, Q explained. Constructs, possibilities. But your choice was real. He circled the Guardians, approval evident in his bearing. You passed the test not by choosing correctly, there was no correct choice, but by choosing based on principles rather than outcomes. You prioritized innocence over utility, humanity over mathematics. The relief flooding through the Guardians was almost painful. You're infuriating, the hunter breathed. Thank you, Q replied cheerfully. Then his expression became serious. But understand this. You will face choices like this in the real world. Times when every option leads to suffering, when power isn't enough, when even paracausal abilities can't save everyone. He met each Guardian's eyes in turn. The question isn't whether you have the power to act, it's whether you have the wisdom to act correctly. And sometimes the wisest action is the one that breaks your heart. The sailing ship rematerialized around them, floating peacefully in space. Through the viewport, the Enterprise waited. Your trial is complete, Q announced. You've proven you're not just weapons. You understand duty, sacrifice, and the weight of impossible choices. That's, he paused, searching for words, surprisingly mature for immortal zombie warriors. The Titan removed his helmet, exhaustion evident in his features. So what happens now? You send us home? Eventually, Q said. But first, there's the matter of the Romulans who've been tracking your energy signatures, and the Tal Shiar agents who've infiltrated the Enterprise. And the fact that your presence here has attracted attention from beings far less benevolent than me? He grinned. Your adventure in this universe is far from over, Guardians. I've merely confirmed you're interesting enough to be worth keeping around. He snapped his fingers and vanished, his laughter echoing across dimensions. The Guardians stood on the empty sailing ship, processing what they just experienced. Artemis broke the silence. That was the single most psychologically traumatic experience I've recorded, and I've been present for 4,000 Guardian deaths. Agreed, Sundance added. Recommend immediate psychological counseling when we return to Enterprise. Second that, Ophiuchus murmured. The warlock sat down on the deck, his legs suddenly unable to support his weight. We almost chose to let a child die based on a future that might not happen. But we didn't, the hunter said, sitting beside him. We chose to be heroes instead of calculators. That counts for something. The Titan joined them, and for a long moment, 3 immortal warriors sat in silence, contemplating the weight of power and the burden of choice. Their ghosts hovered nearby, providing quiet support. And in that moment, they understood something fundamental. All the power in the universe meant nothing if you lost your humanity in wielding it. A transporter beam locked onto them, and they dematerialized, returning to the Enterprise. But Q's final words echoed in their minds. Your adventure is far from over. And somewhere in the darkness of space, a Romulan warbird sensors locked onto the Enterprise's position, or its commander studying reports of paracausal warriors with intense interest. The Tal Shiar had plans for beings who could destroy Borg cubes. The Enterprise conference room felt smaller, with tension thick enough to cut with a batleth. Captain Picard stood at the head of the table, his expression grave as he reviewed pad after pad of sensor data. Commander Riker, Worf, Data, and Counselor Troy occupied their usual positions, while the three Guardians stood rather than sat. Old habits from centuries of combat readiness. 2 hours ago, Picard began, his voice carrying the weight of command. We detected a Romulan warbird decloaking at the edge of our sensor range. They maintained position for precisely 17 minutes, then recloaked and departed. Mr. Data? The android brought up tactical displays on the view screen. An analysis of the warbird sensor emissions indicates they were conducting extensive scans specifically targeting our guests. The scan patterns were consistent with Tal Shiar intelligence gathering protocols. They were building a comprehensive energy profile of Guardian abilities. Tal Shiar? The hunter asked. Romulan military intelligence, Worf growled, his distaste for the organization evident. Ruthless, efficient, and utterly without honor. They specialize in espionage, assassination, and acquiring advanced technology through any means necessary. The Titan's Ghost, Sundance, projected holographic data. Guardian 7, preliminary analysis suggests Romulan sensor technology successfully cataloged our light signatures, weapon configurations, and resurrection protocols. They observed Guardian 12's death and revival during the training exercise with Lieutenant Worf. Which mean, Picard said quietly, they know you can die and return. They know your weapons bypass conventional shielding, and they know you destroyed a Borg cube that would have required an entire fleet to defeat. He met each Guardian's gaze. You've become the most valuable intelligence asset in the quadrant. Every major power will want to either recruit you or eliminate you. Deanna Troi leaned forward, her empathic senses troubled. I'm detecting Romulan telepathic signatures aboard the ship. Very faint, very well shielded, but present. We have infiltrators. The room erupted. Worf's hand immediately went to his phaser. Intruders on the Enterprise? Impossible. Our security protocols are designed for conventional threats, the warlock interrupted, void light already swirling around his fingertips. Not for intelligence operatives with cloaking technology and telepathic training. How many? Troi closed her eyes, concentrating. 2, possibly 3. Their minds are disciplined, compartmentalized. They're waiting, observing. Data's fingers flew across his console, initiating internal sensor sweep for Romulan biosigns, cross-referencing with transporter logs, and he paused, his expression shifting to something approaching surprise. Captain, I am detecting trace amounts of Romulan cellular residue in Jeffrey's Tube 7, Deck 12. The particles are less than 6 hours old. Riker stood, his command instincts taking over. Red alert. Security teams to belay that, Picard ordered, to raising one hand. If the Tal Shiar suspects we know they're here, they'll either go to ground or initiate whatever operation they're planning immediately. He turned to the Guardians. You fought enemies who used stealth and infiltration before? The hunter's cloak billowed despite the lack of wind in the climate-controlled room. Fallen vandals with cloaking tech, hive thralls that burrow through walls. We've hunted invisible enemies in the Cosmodrome's ruins for decades. She checked her hand cannons. You want us to find your Romulan spies? I want, Picard said carefully, to understand their objective before we apprehend them. The Tal Shiar don't infiltrate Federation starships for casual reconnaissance. They're here for a specific purpose. Ophiuchus, the warlock's ghost, pulsed with analytical intensity. Guardian 3? A hypothesis. Tal Shiar objective may involve capture or replication of ghost technology. Our resurrection capabilities would provide significant strategic advantage to any military power. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. They want to capture our ghosts? The Titan's voice carried lethal promise. They want to study resurrection technology? Or weaponize it, Data added grimly. A military force with access to functional immortality would be unstoppable. The strategic implications are... The lights went out. Emergency lighting activated immediately, bathing the conference room in crimson glow. Consoles sparked and died. And in that moment of confusion, two figures materialized from nowhere. Not transported, but decloaked. Winnie, their Romulan features sharp and predatory beneath adaptive camouflage that had defeated the Enterprise's sensors. One was male, tall and lean, holding a disruptor pistol aimed directly at Artemis, the hunter's ghost. The other was female, her hand extended with some kind of capture device that crackled with green energy designed to contain and suppress exotic technology. Tal Shiar, the male agent announced in accented Federation standard. The artificial intelligences will accompany us. Resistance will result in... The hunter moved. Arc light exploded from her body in a blinding flash. She blinked, teleporting in a burst of electricity, and appeared behind the male agent. Her hand cannon pressed against his skull before his finger could complete the trigger pull. "You were saying?" Her voice could have frozen plasma. The female agent spun, the capture device redirecting toward the hunter, but the warlock was already casting. Void energy wrapped around the Romulan like ethereal chains, suspending her in midair, the capture device clattering to the deck. The Titan simply crossed his arms, solar light making his armor glow like a captive sun. "Anyone else want to threaten our ghosts?" A third figure decloaked near the conference room exit. Another Romulan, this one wearing the insignia of a Tal Shiar commander. She was older, her features marked by decades of intelligence work, her eyes calculating and utterly fearless, even as she stared down three paracausal warriors. "Fascinating," she said calmly, as if her agents weren't currently being held at gunpoint and suspended in void energy. "Your reflexes exceed our projections by 47%. A Sub-Commander Salok, Tal Shiar Special Operations. And before your Klingon security chief reaches for his phaser, you should know that this ship is currently surrounded by 3 Romulan warbirds operating under cloak. If I don't transmit an all-clear signal every 60 seconds, they decloak and open fire." Worf's hand froze on his weapon. Picard's diplomatic mask was perfect, revealing nothing. "You infiltrate my ship, threaten my guests, and then threaten my crew. The Neutral Zone Treaty is irrelevant when discussing paracausal weapons of mass destruction," Salok interrupted smoothly. "The Romulan Star Empire has been monitoring your encounter with the Borg. We watched 3 individuals destroy a cube that would have required a fleet to defeat. We observed resurrection technology that violates every known law of physics. And we calculated the strategic implications of such power, falling exclusively into Federation hands." She gestured to the suspended agents. "My orders were simple. Acquire the artificial intelligences for study, determine if the technology can be replicated, and eliminate the warriors if they prove uncontrollable." Her lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "However, I'm prepared to negotiate alternative arrangements." The warlock tightened his void grip slightly, making the female agent gasp. "You're not in a position to negotiate." "Aren't I?" Salok's eyes glittered. "Your paracausal abilities are impressive, but you're currently aboard a Federation starship bound by treaties and diplomatic protocols. If you kill me, you create an incident that could trigger war between the Federation and the Romulan Star Empire. If Captain Picard allows you to kill me, he violates Starfleet's most fundamental principles." She looked at Picard. "And if you attack my warbirds, you doom everyone aboard this vessel." The stalemate hung in the air like a blade. Artemis hovered near the hunter's shoulder, her shell segments rotating rapidly. "Guardian 12, tactical analysis suggests Sub-Commander Salok is correct. We are in a no-win scenario designed to force negotiation." "The Kobayashi Maru," Data murmured. "The unwinnable scenario." Picard stepped forward, his command presence filling the room despite the weapons and paracausal energy crackling through the air. "Sub-Commander Salok, what exactly are you proposing?" The Tal Shiar commander reached into her uniform slowly, extracting a data isolinear chip. "We want information. Guardian technology specifications, combat capabilities, resurrection protocols. In exchange, we provide intelligence that will save Federation lives. What intelligence? Riker demanded. The Borg, Salok said simply. You think the cube your guests destroyed was an isolated incident? We've been tracking collective movements for months. They're gathering, massing in a region of space the Federation hasn't surveyed yet. We estimate 73 cubes, possibly more, preparing for a coordinated assault on the Alpha Quadrant. The silence that followed was absolute. 73 cubes. The Battle of Wolf 359 had been won by a single cube. The thought of 73 operating in coordination was apocalyptic. You're lying, Worf growled. I'm Tal Shiar, Selak replied. I lie when it serves the Empire's interests. Right now, honesty serves better. If the Borg launch that assault, they'll destroy the Federation, then turn their attention to Romulus. We're enemies, Captain Picard, but we're not suicidal. We need those Guardians' abilities analyzed, understood, potentially replicated, because we're all going to need every advantage when the collective comes. The Warlock met Picard's eyes across the room, and in that moment, understanding passed between them. This was the impossible choice Q had warned about. Give the Romulans access to Guardian technology and potentially create a new threat. Refuse and potentially doom the Quadrant to Borg assimilation? Ophiuchus, the Warlock said quietly. Your analysis? His ghost voice was troubled. Guardian 3 Subcommander Salak's biosigns indicate truthfulness regarding the Borg threat. However, providing our technical specifications could enable hostile replication of resurrection technology. The ethical implications are severe. The hunter kept her weapon pressed against the male agent's skull. In our universe, we don't negotiate with enemies. We eliminate them. This isn't your universe, Deanna Troi said gently. Here, former enemies become allies. The Klingons were our greatest threat once. Now they're our most trusted partners. The Klingons, Worf rumbled, have honor. The Romulans have ambition. Selleck laughed, the sound genuinely amused. And the Federation has idealism that borders on delusion. Captain Picard, you have 10 seconds to decide before my warbirds interpret my silence as mission failure and open fire. 10 seconds to choose between principles and survival. She had 10 seconds to decide if sharing Guardian technology was collaboration or catastrophe. 10 seconds to determine the Quadrant's fate. Picard looked at the Guardians, 3 warriors from a universe perpetually at war, now facing the consequences of bringing that war's weapons into a universe trying desperately to maintain peace. Release them, Picard ordered. The hunter's hand cannon didn't waver. Captain, that's an order, Picard said firmly. We don't execute prisoners, and we don't allow our guests to do so either. The Warlock released his void grip. The female agent dropped to the deck, gasping. The hunter slowly lowered her weapon, stepping away from the male agent with visible reluctance. Salok transmitted her all-clear signal. The countdown stopped. Now, Picard said, his voice carrying steel beneath the diplomacy, and we negotiate, but not here, and not like this. You'll be confined to quarters under guard while I consult with Starfleet Command. The Guardians' technology is not mine to share. It belongs to them and their civilization. Any agreement must have their consent. He turned to the Guardians. And you will not execute Romulan agents aboard my ship, regardless of provocation. Is that understood? The 3 warriors exchanged glances, centuries of following orders in conflict with their instinct to eliminate threats. Finally, the Titan nodded. Understood, Captain. But if they threaten our ghosts again, diplomacy ends. Noted, Picard said. Then to Salok, you and your agents will surrender your weapons and submit to confinement. In exchange, I'll hear your intelligence regarding the Borg threat and consider some form of information exchange. Salok studied him for a long moment, then smiled. You're more pragmatic than your reputation suggests, Captain. Very well, we accept your terms. She gestured to her agents, who reluctantly handed over their disruptors and capture devices. As Worf escorted the Romulans out under heavy guard, Riker turned to Picard. Sir, you can't seriously be considering giving them Guardian technology. I'm considering, Picard replied carefully, how to prevent the Borg from assimilating the Quadrant while not creating a new arms race with paracausal weapons. He looked at the Guardians. This is exactly what Q warned us about. Power without wisdom, strength without understanding of consequences. The warlock sat heavily in one of the conference chairs, exhaustion finally catching up to him. In our universe, we have the Vanguard, commanders who make these strategic decisions so Guardians can focus on fighting. We're weapons. We're not supposed to make calls about who gets access to our technology. But you're here, Picard said gently, in a universe without your Vanguard. So the choice falls to you. Will you share your knowledge to help fight the Borg? Or will you refuse and potentially watch this quadrant fall to assimilation? The hunter removed her cloak, folding it carefully, a ritual from centuries of campaign. What happens if we share ghost technology and the Romulans weaponize it? If they create armies of immortal soldiers? Then we face a new threat, Data replied. Well, one we helped create. The moral calculus is challenging. Artemis projected historical data from Guardian archives. Guardian 12, for context, in our universe, the Iron Lords attempted to share SIVA nanotechnology with non-Guardian humans. The technology was corrupted, weaponized, and led to a catastrophe that nearly destroyed the last city. Sharing paracausal technology with those who don't understand it has precedent for disaster. The Titan stood and walked to the view screen, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 73 Borg cubes were gathering, and 3 Romulan warbirds waited in cloak, their commanders calculating how to exploit paracausal warriors for the Empire's benefit. We need more information, he said finally, about the Borg threat, about what the Romulans actually want, and about what sharing our technology would really mean. He turned back to Picard. In our world, we'd send a Fireteam on reconnaissance, scout the enemy, gather intelligence, make an informed decision. Picard's eyes sharpened. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? The Titan smiled grimly. Captain, you've got 3 immortal warriors with weapons that ignore physics and the ability to resurrect from death. And you've got intelligence that the Borg are massing somewhere in unexplored space. He cracked his knuckles, solar light flickering around his fists. Sounds like the perfect mission for Guardians. Riker looked at his captain. Sir, we can't send civilians on a reconnaissance mission into Borg space. Starfleet regulations specify that civilians cannot be ordered on dangerous missions, Picard finished. Ace, but they don't prohibit volunteers. He studied the 3 Guardians. You would do this? Venture into unknown space to gather intelligence on a Borg fleet with no guarantee of return? The 3 warriors looked at each other, and something passed between them. Centuries of camaraderie, thousands of deaths faced together, an unspoken understanding that this was what they did. Yeah, the hunter said simply. We would. The warlock added, it's what we're good at. Impossible missions, overwhelming odds, coming back from the dead to complete the objective. Besides, the Titan finished, if there really are 73 Borg cubes out there, better we find them now than have them show up unannounced at Earth. Picard was quiet for a long moment, the weight of command evident in every line of his face. Finally, he nodded. Very well. Mr. Data, prepare a runabout for long-range reconnaissance. Mr. LaForge, outfit it with every stealth and sensor upgrade we have, and get me Sub-Commander Sealock. If she wants our cooperation, she can provide the exact coordinates of the supposed Borg fleet. As the senior staff dispersed to prepare, Counselor Troy lingered with the Guardians. You're afraid, she said quietly, her empathic senses reading what they wouldn't voice. Not of dying. You've done that thousands of times. You're afraid of being stranded here permanently, of never seeing your home universe again. The warlock's hands trembled slightly before he clenched them into fists. We have responsibilities, people depending on us. The last city needs its Guardians, and we're here. Playing politics with Romulans and hunting Borg instead of defending our own people. Your people survived before you, Troy said gently, and they'll survive while you're gone. What matters now is what you can do here, in this moment, in this universe, she smiled. Besides, I have a feeling your absence will motivate someone back home to find a way to retrieve you. Warriors like you don't stay lost. The hunter laughed, the sound carrying less bitterness than before. You know what, Counselor? I'm starting to like this universe. Therapy-speaking empaths, captains who negotiate with spies instead of shooting them, and androids who ask philosophical questions. She stood, checking her weapons. If we're stuck here, might as well make ourselves useful. And maybe, Sundance added thoughtfully, and we can teach this universe something about fighting the darkness, even if it's not our darkness. Outside the conference room, the Enterprise prepared for a mission that would either save the quadrant or doom it. The Romulans waited in their cells, calculating their next move. And somewhere in the depths of unexplored space, 73 Borg cubes drifted in formation, their collective consciousness focused on a single objective: the complete assimilation of the Alpha Quadrant. The Guardians were about to discover that in this universe, the darkness wore a different face, but immortal warriors stood ready nonetheless. The runabout Rio Grande streaked through space at maximum warp, its hull reinforced with ablative armor and its sensor array upgraded with every stealth technology Geordi LaForge could integrate in 6 hours. Inside the cramped cockpit, 3 Guardians sat among Starfleet officers on what might be the most dangerous reconnaissance mission in Federation history. Lieutenant Commander Data piloted with android precision, his positronic brain calculating navigation solutions faster than the ship's computer. Beside him, Worf monitored tactical systems, his warrior's instincts on high alert. And in the rear compartment, the 3 Guardians performed pre-mission rituals that hadn't changed in centuries. The hunter cleaned her hand cannons with methodical care, each movement practiced to the point of meditation. The Titan checked his armor's integrity, running diagnostics on systems that combined Golden Age technology with paracausal enhancement. The Warlock sat cross-legged in meditation, his consciousness touching the edges of the void, out and preparing his light for whatever awaited. Their ghosts floated nearby, sharing data in quantum encrypted bursts that made the runabout systems hiccup with incomprehension. Approaching coordinates provided by Sub-Commander Saylock, Data announced. Estimated time to target, 14 minutes. Dropping to impulse power in 3, 2, 1. The runabout shuddered as it fell out of warp, and immediately every stealth system activated. The hull shimmered with adaptive camouflage. Emissions dropped to near zero. They became a ghost in the darkness, drifting silently toward coordinates that Romulan intelligence claimed held a nightmare. Worf's tactical display lit up like a Federation Day celebration. "Mein Gott," the Klingon whispered, his warrior's composure cracking for just a moment. Data's eyes widened fractionally, the android equivalent of abject horror. Sensors confirmed Sub-Commander Saylock's intelligence. "I am detecting 74 Borg cubes in close formation. Mass approximately 42 billion metric tons. Power signatures exceed our sensor maximum threshold." On the view screen, the truth revealed itself. They floated in a massive debris field, the remnants of what must have been a dozen solar systems, torn apart and processed into raw materials for the collective. And among the wreckage, Borg cubes drifted in perfect geometric formation, connected by energy tethers that pulsed with sickly green light. But it wasn't just cubes. At the formation's center, something massive was under construction. A structure so large it made the cubes look like children's toys. A geometric nightmare of impossible angles and adaptive technology, easily 100 kilometers across and still growing. Borg drones swarmed over its surface like ants, adding components, integrating systems, building something the Federation had never encountered. "What is that?" the Titan asked, his voice tight with the recognition of an extinction-level threat. Data's fingers flew across his console, analyzing sensor data. "Unknown Borg construct. Configuration suggests a mobile command platform, but the scale is unprecedented. Energy readings indicate it possesses weapons capable of sterilizing planetary surfaces from orbit, shield generators that could withstand sustained fleet bombardment, one-ton processing capacity exceeding the combined computational power of the entire Federation." Artemis performed her own scans, her Guardian databases searching for comparable threats. Structural analysis suggests similarity to hive dreadnoughts from our universe, capital-class vessels designed for system-wide assimilation operations. If the Borg have developed equivalent technology, then they can assimilate entire sectors, the Warlock finished grimly. Not planets, not star systems, entire sectors of space in coordinated operations. Worf's tactical assessment was equally bleak. At current construction rate, the structure will be operational in approximately 72 hours. If it proceeds to Federation space with those cube escorts— He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The hunter leaned forward, her tactical mind cataloging defensive positions, approach vectors, structural weaknesses. We need to destroy it, now, before it becomes operational. With what weapons? Data replied. This runabout's phaser arrays would be ineffective against a single cube's shields. Against 74 cubes in that construct, we would be annihilated before achieving measurable damage. We wouldn't use the runabout, the Titan said, solar light already beginning to glow around his fists. We'd use us. Worf turned in his seat, respect and concern warring in his expression. You propose a direct assault? 3 warriors against 74 cubes and a dreadnought-class vessel under construction? We've done worse, the warlock said quietly. The Vault of Glass, Crota's throne world, Oryx's dreadnought, Ira Riven in the Dreaming City. He met Worf's eyes. Guardians specialize in impossible odds. Ophiuchus projected tactical overlays, his processing subroutines running combat simulations. Guardian 3, preliminary analysis suggests infiltration is feasible. The construct is still under construction. Internal security will be focused on construction drones, not defensive protocols. If we can reach the central processing core and introduce a cascading system failure, we could destroy it from the inside, the hunter finished, like we did with the last cube. Except this time, we go in knowing we're probably not coming back. Sundance's voice carried unusual gravity. Guardian 7, statistical analysis of combat scenarios yields a 97.3% probability of mission failure, resulting in permanent death. The energy concentration at the construct's core would prevent ghost resurrection protocols, even if we survive initial assault. The temperature in the runabout dropped. The Guardians had died thousands of times, but those deaths had been temporary, painful, traumatic, but ultimately reversible. Their ghosts always brought them back. It was the foundation of Guardian existence: fight, die, resurrect, repeat. But this was different. This was permanent death, true ending. No resurrection, no second chances. The Titan removed his helmet, revealing a face carved by centuries of warfare. In our universe, we've lost Guardians permanently, when their light is drained or their ghost destroyed. We call them the final deaths. We honor them as heroes who gave everything. He looked at his Fireteam. If we do this, we might join them. Our ghosts might not be able to bring us back. This could be our last mission. The warlock was silent, his hands trembling slightly. 217 years of fighting, thousands of deaths, countless resurrections, and now potentially a true ending. He thought of the last city, the people he'd protected, the guardians he'd fought beside, the civilization that depended on warriors like him standing between the light and the darkness. And he thought of this universe, the Federation, Captain Picard's desperate hope, the billions who would die if the Borg launched this assault. Ophiuchus, he said quietly, if we do this and fail, can you at least transmit what we learned back to the Enterprise? Give them intelligence on the construct? His ghost shell segments rotated slowly, the equivalent of a solemn nod. Affirmative. On a Guardian 3, final data burst is prepared. If resurrection becomes impossible, I will ensure our sacrifice provides tactical advantage to survivors. The hunter checked her ammunition. Exotic rounds crafted from paracausal materials, each one irreplaceable. Each one a masterwork of Guardian engineering. I've been fighting for so long, I barely remember what I was before the ghost found me in that scrapyard on the Cosmodrome. She smiled without humor. Feels fitting that my last fight would be against impossible odds for people I barely know. That's what Guardians do, the Titan said simply. We stand between the darkness and those who can't fight it themselves. Doesn't matter what universe we're in. Worf stood, his Klingon honor recognizing something fundamental in these warriors. If you do this, if you sacrifice yourselves to destroy that construct, the Federation will remember. I will personally ensure your names are entered in the halls of heroes alongside the greatest warriors in Klingon history. We don't have names, the hunter said. Just designations, just missions, she paused, just each other. Data turned from his console, his android features showing something approaching emotion. The result of his emotion chip processing the gravity of what these warriors were considering. There must be another way, a tactical solution that does not require suicide. We're open to suggestions, the warlock replied. The android's positronic brain ran through thousands of scenarios in microseconds. If we could generate a sufficient distraction, draw the cubes away from the construct, well, you might infiltrate with reduced opposition. However, creating a distraction significant enough to attract 74 Borg cubes would require a Federation starship, the hunter interrupted, understanding dawning in her eyes. Something valuable enough that the Borg can't ignore it. Something that would make them mobilize their forces. The Enterprise, Worf breathed. No, Data said immediately. Captain Picard would never authorize using his ship as bait for an operation with such low probability of success. Then we don't ask permission, the Titan said. We transmit false sensor data. Make it look like the Enterprise is conducting a deep space survey in this sector. The Borg detect a Galaxy-class starship, a high-value target full of technology to assimilate. They send the cubes to investigate, and while they're distracted, we hit the construct. Artemis ran calculations. Guardian 12, that plan requires us to falsify Starfleet communications, deceive Captain Picard, and potentially doom the Enterprise if the Borg call our bluff and actually attack. I know, the hunter said quietly, but if we don't stop this construct, the Enterprise dies anyway when the Borg launch their assault. At least this way, we give the Federation a chance. Worf's hands clenched on his console. I cannot be party to deception against my captain. My honor. Your honor will mean nothing if the Federation falls, the Titan interrupted. Sometimes honor means making impossible choices. Isn't that what Q was teaching us? That power requires wisdom, and wisdom sometimes requires breaking your own rules. The Klingon warrior stood frozen, so torn between loyalty to his captain and recognition of tactical necessity. Data's expression was troubled. I am programmed to follow Starfleet regulations, falsifying communications, conducting unauthorized combat operations, deceiving superior officers. These actions violate my core protocols. But you have free will, the warlock said. Picard told us about your journey toward humanity, about how you've learned to make choices based on conscience rather than programming. He met the android's golden eyes. What does your conscience say, Commander Data? Do we follow regulations and let billions die? Or do we break the rules to save them? The silence in the runabout stretched like a blade. Outside, the Borg drones continued their construction, each moment bringing the nightmare vessel closer to completion. Finally, Data spoke, his voice carrying the weight of a choice that might define him. My conscience suggests that some rules exist to serve life, and when following those rules guarantees death, the rules themselves become meaningless. He turned to his console. I will transmit false sensor data indicating the Enterprise is conducting scientific surveys in adjacent sector. The Borg will detect the transmission and likely dispatch investigation forces. Worf growled deep in his throat, a sound of anguish and acceptance. I will prepare tactical overlays for Guardian insertion during the distraction. But know this, if we survive this mission, I will personally report our deception to Captain Picard and accept whatever consequences follow. If we survive, the hunter said, and I'll stand beside you when you do. The Guardians moved to the runabout's aft compartment, checking weapons and armor with the practiced efficiency of warriors preparing for their last battle. They'd fought together for subjective centuries, died together thousands of times, and now potentially, they would end together. The Titan clasped arms with his Fireteam in the ancient gesture of Guardian solidarity. Whatever happens, it's been an honor fighting beside you. The honor was ours, the warlock replied, his voice thick with emotion. He'd thought centuries of death had burned away. The hunter simply nodded, her tactical mind already shifting into combat mode. The place beyond fear, where only mission objectives existed. Their ghosts hovered in a triangle formation, their shells dimmed with something approaching morning. Guardians, Sundance said softly, if this is our final deployment, know that being bonded to you has been the greatest purpose this unit could have hoped for. You have been more than warriors. You have been friends. Artemis added, Guardian 12, statistical probability suggests we will not survive this mission, but statistical probability has never stopped us before. Perhaps this universe needs to learn that Guardians don't accept impossible odds. We simply change what possible means. Ophiuchus finished. Guardian 3, the light has sustained us through 2 centuries of impossible battles. Perhaps it will sustain us one more time. And if not, then we die knowing we protected those who could not protect themselves. That is what Guardians are. That is who we have always been. Data transmitted the false sensor data. Deep in the Borg construct, the collective detected what appeared to be a Federation starship. Valuable technology, biological distinctiveness, assimilation and potential high. 47 cubes broke formation and warped toward the false coordinates, leaving the construct defended by 27 cubes and construction drones. 27 cubes. Still impossible odds. Still a suicide mission. Still what Guardians did best. "Transmat on my mark," the warlock said. Void light already swirling around his hands in preparation for the battle that would either save a quadrant or become their final grave. Worf gripped his batleth, knowing he could not join them but honoring their warrior's courage with Klingon respect. Kopla, success. Data's hands trembled slightly on the controls. Emotional processing overwhelming positronic logic. May you die with honor. The 3 Guardians stood in the transporter buffer, their light burning bright against the darkness of space. "Guardian Fireteam," the Titan said, his voice carrying across quantum channels to his team. "Ready?" "Ready," the Hunter confirmed. "Ready," the Warlock agreed, their ghosts aligned, channeling light for what might be the last time. Transmat firing. 3 pillars of light erupted in the runabout, and when they faded, the Guardians were gone, materialized inside a Borg construct that had never encountered warriors who treated death as merely inconvenient. The final battle had begun, and somewhere in normal space, Captain Picard stood on the Enterprise bridge, unaware that 3 immortal warriors were currently fighting for his universe's survival without his knowledge or consent. The interior of the Borg construct was a nightmare-given form. Corridors that stretched into impossible distances, walls that pulsed with organic circuitry, and the constant hum of trillions of nanoprobes flowing through conduits like mechanical blood. The Guardians materialized in a construction zone, surrounded by drones working with perfect synchronization to build the vessel that would doom the Federation. For 3 seconds, the collective didn't recognize the intrusion. Then every drone in a 100-meter radius turned as one. Species paracausal, adaptation priority, maximum, threat assessment, extreme. Directive, terminate with extreme prejudice. The Hunter grinned behind her helmet. Finally, they're taking us seriously. She activated her arc staff and became lightning incarnate. Suddenly, electricity exploded from her body in cascading waves, chaining from drone to drone in arcs of blue-white fury. Her hand cannons roared, each shot a thunderclap that punched through Borg shielding that had adapted to Federation weapons, but couldn't comprehend energy that existed outside physics itself. The Titan charged forward like an armored meteor, his hammer of soul manifesting in blazing glory. Each swing vaporized drones in solar fire. Each impact left craters in the deck plating. When 20 drones tried to swarm him, he planted his barrier, a wall of pure light that the Borg couldn't penetrate, couldn't adapt to, couldn't understand, and methodically destroyed them from behind perfect cover. The Warlock hung back, his hands weaving patterns of void energy. Nova bombs sailed down corridors, one creating gravitational singularities that crushed drones into atomic paste. His chaos reach carved through bulkheads following Ophiuchus's navigation toward the construct's central core. And when drones tried to flank him, he cast a healing rift and simply out-healed their damage while his fire team dismantled them. They were 3 warriors against impossible odds. And for the first time in Borg history, the collective was losing. In the runabout, Data monitored the Guardians' progress through sensor feeds that barely functioned inside the construct's exotic interference. They have penetrated 7 decks, and he reported. Borg casualty estimates, 4,312 drones terminated. Guardian casualties, 0, though Guardian 12 has died and been resurrected twice. Win Guardian 7 once. Worf watched the tactical display with warriors' respect. They fight like Klingons possessed by the spirit of Kahless himself. No hesitation, no retreat, only victory or death. Both, apparently, Data murmured. They achieved both simultaneously. The android's sensors detected something else. The 47 cubes dispatched to investigate the false Enterprise signal were realizing the deception. They were turning back, accelerating to maximum warp. Cubes returning to construct, Data announced, dread in his synthetic voice. ETA, 11 minutes. The Guardians cannot possibly destroy the core and escape before the cubes arrive. Worf's hand tightened on his console. Then we must provide extraction immediately. They knew this was one way, Data replied quietly. They accepted it. This is their choice. Deep in the construct's heart, the Guardians fought through layers of Borg defenses that grew more desperate with each deck they conquered. The collective was learning, throwing not just drones but tactical cubes worth of automated defenses, plasma barriers, and assimilation protocols designed specifically to counter paracausal abilities. It wasn't enough. The Hunter dodged assimilation tubules with precognitive grace, centuries of fighting enemies faster than thought, giving her reflexes that made Borg adaptation look sluggish. When a drone managed to inject nanoprobes into her arm, she simply let the light burn them from her bloodstream and shot the drone in its cortical implant. The Titan absorbed damage that would vaporize starships, his solar light too bright, too hot, or too fundamentally wrong for Borg weapons to affect. When plasma conduits flooded a corridor with lethal radiation, he walked through it like a god of fire, his armor glowing white-hot, but his body untouched. The warlock fought with devastating precision, each ability placed with surgical accuracy. He'd calculated the most efficient path to the core, the optimal energy expenditure, the exact timing required. His centuries of study and death had made him the perfect strategic mind for impossible operations. Core chamber ahead, Ophiuchus announced. Guardian 3, detecting massive energy concentration. The construct's central processing matrix is defended by approximately 50,000 drones and automated weapon systems that exceed our sensor classification. Odds? The warlock asked, already knowing the answer. Yes, impossible, his ghost replied. But when has that stopped us? They breached the core chamber. It was vast, a spherical space kilometers across, its walls lined with processing nodes that pulsed with green light. In the center floated the collective's local consciousness, a massive sphere of organic processors and cybernetic interfaces where the construct's mind resided, and surrounding it, layer upon layer of drones, shields, and weapons. The collective spoke through every drone simultaneously, its voice echoing through dimensions. Paracausal entities, you have penetrated our defenses through abilities we cannot assimilate. You have destroyed thousands of drones through power that violates natural law, but you cannot destroy us. We are infinite. We are inevitable. We are perfection. The Titan hefted his hand cannon, solar light making it glow like a fragment of a newborn star. Yeah, we've heard that before. Right before we killed gods. He fired. The exotic round struck the central sphere's shielding and detonated in a nuclear fireball. Alarms screamed. The collective's processing stuttered, and 50,000 drones surged forward in a wave of mechanical fury. The Guardians unleashed everything. The Hunter activated her golden gun, 3 shots of concentrated solar fire that could kill gods. Each bullet punched through the sphere's shields, leaving molten craters in its surface. She followed up with blade barrage, dozens of flaming knives that homed on the sphere like miniature stars seeking their gravity well. The Titan became a whirlwind of destruction, his burning maul smashing through drones like they were made of paper. He spun, with momentum carrying him through enemy ranks, each impact a detonation that cleared entire sections. When the drones tried to overwhelm him with sheer numbers, he activated his Fist of Havoc and became a meteor of arc destruction that cratered the deck and electrocuted everything within 50 meters. The warlock floated above the chaos, his hands weaving the most complex spell he'd ever attempted. He was combining abilities, layering effects, channeling more light than his body should be able to contain. Nova Bomb merged with Chaos Reach, void energy intertwining with arc lightning, creating a cascade of paracausal fury that spiraled toward the central sphere. Ophiuchus, he gasped, his body burning from the inside with the strain. If this doesn't work, Guardian 3, your light output exceeds safe parameters by 400%. Your body's experiencing cellular breakdown from paracausal overload. You're killing yourself. I know, the warlock replied and released the spell. The combined assault struck the sphere simultaneously. Solar fire, arc lightning, and void annihilation converging on a single point. The shields held for 3 seconds. Then they shattered like glass, and the Guardian's power tore into the collective's consciousness. The construct screamed, not metaphorically. The entire vessel emitted a sound like tearing metal and dying machines, a shriek that echoed through subspace and made reality itself shudder. Processing nodes exploded. Drones fell by the thousands, their connection to the collective severed, and the central sphere cracked, green light bleeding from fissures as the Borg's local consciousness began to die. But it wasn't dead yet, and the construct initiated self-destruct protocols. Antimatter containment began to fail. Fusion reactors went critical. The entire vessel would detonate in less than 60 seconds, an explosion large enough to sterilize everything within a light year. "Fireteam!" the Titan shouted over the chaos. "We need extraction now." Artemis's voice carried impossible sorrow. "Guardian 12, transmat is offline. The construct's exotic interference is too severe. I cannot get a lock." "Override it," the hunter demanded, fighting her way toward the exit even as the deck plated beneath her feet began to melt. "I cannot. The physics here are wrong. I need—" Artemis paused. "Guardian 12, I'm detecting a transporter signal. Not ours, Federation technology. The runabout is attempting to beam us out." In the Rio Grande, Nidaita's fingers flew across controls with android speed, locking onto Guardian biosigns, compensating for exotic interference. "Boost power to transporter by Mr. Worf, I need more power." Worf diverted everything, life support, weapons, shields, even structural integrity, into the transporter. "Energizing now!" The beam locked on, but there was a problem. The transporter could only grab 2 targets simultaneously through the interference, not 3. Someone would be left behind. The Guardians realized it instantly. "Take them," the Titan said, his voice absolutely calm. "I'll hold here. Make sure the sphere is dead." "Negative," the hunter snarled. "You've got the most armor. You take the hit. I'll—" "Both of you shut up," the warlock interrupted. His body was already failing. So cellular breakdown from channeling too much light catching up to him. Blood ran from his nose, his eyes, his ears. "I'm already dying. Ophiuchus can't resurrect me from this. I'm the logical choice." "Guardian 3, no," his ghost began. "It's an order, Ophiuchus. Transmit all tactical data to the Enterprise. Tell them the construct is destroyed. Tell them—" He smiled through the blood. "Tell them a Guardian kept his oath." The transporter grabbed the hunter and the Titan. They dematerialized, screaming protests through their comm channels. And the warlock stood alone in a dying Borg construct, watching the countdown tick toward 0. Ophiuchus hovered beside him, his shell segments perfectly still. "Guardian 3, I have been your companion for 217 years, through thousands of deaths and resurrections. Through impossible battles and cosmic wars, it has been the greatest honor of my existence." The warlock reached up and gently touched his ghost shell. "The honor was mine, old friend. You gave me purpose. You gave me life. And now—" He looked at the cracking sphere, ensuring it was truly dying. "Now we give this universe a chance." 50 seconds. The deck pitched as fusion reactors detonated on lower levels. The warlock fell to his knees, his body too damaged to stand, but his consciousness remained sharp. 40 seconds. He thought of the last city, of standing on the tower walls at dawn, watching the traveler's light paint the sky in colors that had no names, of the people he'd protected who would never know his name or his sacrifice. 30 seconds. He thought of this universe, of Captain Picard's desperate hope for peace, of Data's journey toward humanity, of Worf's warrior honor, of a civilization that tried so hard to find alternatives to violence, even when violence was the only answer. 20 seconds. He thought of his Fireteam, the Hunter's tactical brilliance, the Titan's unbreakable courage, the centuries they'd fought together, died together, been resurrected together. They would survive. They would find a way home. They would remember him. 10 seconds. "Ophiuchus," he whispered, "last request. When the Hunter and Titan get home, Tell them. Tell them it was worth it. Every death, every resurrection, every impossible mission. It was all worth it to stand in the light. His ghost voice broke with something AIs weren't supposed to feel. I will, Guardian, I promise. 5 seconds. The warlock closed his eyes and felt the light within him. The paracausal flame that had burned for 2 centuries, through thousands of deaths, never extinguished. It burned bright now at the end, a star going supernova in his soul. 3 seconds. Eyes up, Guardian, Ophiuchus whispered, using the phrase that had begun every resurrection for over 200 years. 2 seconds. The warlock smiled. The light never fades. 1 second. The construct detonated. The explosion was visible from the runabout as a miniature sun being born and dying in the same instant. Antimatter meeting matter in the most violent reaction known to physics, amplified by the construct's exotic technology into a blast that briefly outshone the sector's stars. The Rio Grande rode the shockwave, its shields buckling but holding, its hull screaming with stress but intact. In the aft compartment, the Hunter and the Titan materialized, their armor scorched and their weapons depleted, but alive. Alive when their brother was not. The Hunter fell to her knees, a sound escaping her throat that was too raw to be called grief. Artemis hovered beside her, dim to near darkness, mourning in the way only a ghost could mourn a guardian they'd fought beside for centuries. The Titan stood frozen, his hands clenched so tight his gauntlets groaned with the pressure. Sundance settled on his shoulder, silent, sharing the weight of loss that no amount of resurrection could heal. On the view screen, sensors confirmed what they already knew. The construct was destroyed. The remaining 27 cubes, their command vessel annihilated, were scattering in confusion. When their collective coordination shattered, the 47 returning cubes detected the destruction and fled into transwarp, abandoning the sector entirely. The Borg threat was broken, the Federation was saved, and it had cost one Guardian his final death. Worf stood and placed a hand over his heart in Klingon salute. He died with more honor than any warrior I have known. Stovo Kor will welcome him as a hero. Data's emotion chip processed loss for the first time in his existence. He sacrificed himself so that billions he never met could live. That is, the android's voice failed. That is the most human thing I have ever witnessed. The runabout turned toward Federation space, carrying 2 Guardians home, but not all 3. Epilogue. 3 weeks later, Captain Picard stood in the Enterprise's observation lounge, just staring at the stars. Behind him, the Hunter and the Titan stood at attention, their armor polished for the formal proceeding. Starfleet Command, Picard said quietly, has officially recognized your actions as having prevented the greatest Borg incursion in Federation history. You destroyed a weapon that would have assimilated entire sectors. You saved billions of lives. He turned to face them. And you did it by disobeying orders, falsifying communications, and conducting an unauthorized military operation that resulted in the death of your companion. The Hunter's voice was steady, despite the grief that still carved her from within. Yes, sir. By every regulation in Starfleet, I should confine you to quarters pending court-martial. Picard's expression softened. But regulations didn't save the Federation. You did. Well, Guardian 3 did. He walked to his desk and retrieved a small case. Inside, a medal, the Federation's highest honor for valor. I cannot give this to him, Picard said, but I can give it to you, to carry in his memory. And I can promise that his sacrifice will never be forgotten. The Titan accepted the medal with trembling hands. Thank you, Captain. We've also made progress on your situation, Picard continued. Mr. Data has been analyzing the rift that brought you here. He believes that with Romulan assistance, yes, Sub-Commander Salok has proven surprisingly cooperative. We can generate a controlled dimensional bridge. It will take time, resources, and considerable luck, but you may be able to go home. The Hunter and the Titan exchanged glances. What if we're not ready to go home yet? The Hunter asked quietly. Picard's eyebrow raised. The Borg are still out there, the Titan explained. Broken, scattered, but not extinct. And this universe, he gestured to the stars, it's starting to grow on us. Maybe we can do some good here. In his memory, Artemis and Sundance materialized, their shells painted with new markings, memorial symbols for a fallen Guardian. Guardian 12 and Guardian 7 request permission to remain in this universe, Artemis announced formally, as liaisons between the Federation and Guardian forces, to honor Guardian 3's sacrifice by continuing his mission, standing between the darkness and those who cannot fight it themselves. Picard was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. Permission granted. Welcome to Starfleet, Guardians. Not as weapons, not as soldiers, but as the heroes you've proven yourselves to be. The Hunter and the Titan saluted, not in Guardian fashion, but in Starfleet style, honoring the universe that had become their unexpected home. Outside the observation lounge windows, the stars burned bright. And somewhere in the paracausal dimensions between universes, a warlock's light finally faded. His last thought a prayer that his sacrifice had mattered, that his death had meant something. It had. 2 Guardians remained to prove it every single day in a universe that had learned what it meant when immortal warriors chose to stand in the light. The Federation would remember Guardian 3's sacrifice. His name, or rather, his designation, was entered into Starfleet's Memorial Hall alongside the heroes of Wolf 359, the Dominion War, and the Borg incursions. Not as a footnote, but as a warrior who proved that courage transcended universes. The Hunter and the Titan became legends in their own right. They trained Starfleet officers in combat techniques that merged paracausal power with Federation tactics. They stood beside the Enterprise in battles against threats both familiar and new. In every mission, every fight, every impossible victory carried the weight of the brother they'd lost. Subcommander Salok, true to Romulan pragmatism, negotiated a treaty that allowed limited information exchange. The Federation learned from Guardian technology, while the Romulans gained allies who'd proven they could destroy Borg cubes. An uneasy alliance, but one forged in mutual respect and survival necessity. Q returned eventually to observe how his test subjects had evolved. He found 2 Guardians who'd learned that power without wisdom was tyranny, that strength without sacrifice was hollow, and that sometimes the greatest victory was choosing who to save rather than how to win. Well done, the omnipotent being said, genuine approval in his ancient voice. You've learned what it means to be truly human, not through your power, but through your loss. And somewhere in the quantum foam between dimensions, 3 ghosts, Artemis, Sundance, and Ophiuchus, maintained a connection across the multiverse, a link between universes that ensured no Guardian would ever truly be forgotten. The light never fades. Even in death, especially in death, it endures. 2 Guardians stood ready in a universe not their own, carrying the memory of one who fell so that billions could rise. They had become more than weapons, or more than immortal soldiers, more than paracausal anomalies in a causal universe. They had become symbols of hope in the darkness. And in both universes, in the Federation's halls and the Last City's tower, people looked to the stars and remembered. When the impossible threatens, when the darkness gathers, when all hope seems lost, there stand warriors who refuse to surrender. Guardians,